Testing, testing. Hello, hello, hello. All right, everybody. Guess who's a little bit early today? Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit early. Zoro's plans to ditch Elbaf. Zoro will have the Giants of Elbaf following his lead in no time. How many samurai did Zoro get to follow him? Was it none? Was there some hidden samurai that ended up following Zoro? Hoping for another 40 minutes on Law slander again? Yeah, Law did not contribute this chapter whatsoever. I don't think I need to slander him. He just didn't contribute. Did 1172 release? Of course it released. I appreciate you being at the stream before even checking out the 1172 release. Damn, more just somewhere to be today? No. I've nowhere to be but here. Hold on. Hold on. All right, there we go. People are slandering Elbaf more for being boring. Elbaf is not well, I think once the fights start, people will be excited. I think this chapter was essentially the rallying cry for the battle to begin. But I think the fights actually need to begin for people to feel excited. I think so I don't want to get too much into matchups because I have a whole video on that coming out tomorrow morning. Yeah, I have a whole video coming out on that tomorrow morning, so there's not much. I'm gonna avoid getting too much into matchups, but I think there are several. I'm genuinely really excited for the fights that are coming up because I think the fights that are around the corner are gonna be some of the best possible routes for power-ups for several of the Straw Hats that really need it. So I'm personally really excited. Stormy says, am I a fake fan if I don't even pay attention to the maps and just assume everything makes sense? So I had two options when I was reading this chapter of what video to do for tomorrow, right? When I say reading the chapter, to be honest, I read the spoilers and the scans because I'm trying to keep up with the new video schedule with us trying to get the videos out faster, okay? So there's two options. One was the hype thing, and that's what I felt in my heart, which was talking about the matchups. Like, what are the fights that look like they're around the corner? I think what Oda is set to do is something really, really good. I think Oda is set to make fans of many characters happy. I think Zoro fans are going to be very happy with what he's set to get. I think Sanji fans are going to be very happy with what he's set to get. I think Usopp fans are going to be very happy with what he's set to get. I think Robin and Brook fans are also going to be very happy. Oda's set up a lot. I think this arc has a lot of parallels to Thriller Bark. I elaborate on this a little bit more in tomorrow's video, but it has a ton of parallels to Thriller Bark in terms of setup. And one thing that was notable about Thriller Bark that makes it very distinct from other One Piece arcs is that Thriller Bark it was one of the few arcs where Luffy truly took a back seat for the majority of the storyline to the rest of the Straw Hats. I still really, really dislike the fact that he pulled out Nightmare Luffy out of his ass just to weaken Oars somewhat more. I think it would have been much better if you just let the Straw Hats get Oars' health bar down to like 5%, and then that whole team attack that the Straw Hats all do together at the end with Luffy giving the finishing blow, perfect, right? And then let Luffy have Moria. But I think that is the one thing I would change about Thriller Bark. There is no need whatsoever for Nightmare Luffy to be a thing. There's just no need whatsoever for it to be a thing. That's my opinion. But that being said, right, even if we set aside the Nightmare Luffy stuff, right, for the majority of Thriller Bark, Luffy is in the backseat. The Straw Hats are the ones who get the main screen time. Even Luffy's main fight of the arc, which is against Moria, is very short. It's very, very short. I remember because I'd finished Enies Lobby, and so I was really excited. I wanted to see the next high-level Luffy fight. I was really looking forward to that the entire arc, so I was hoping that Luffy's going to pull out, like, another gear or something like that. And then Luffy versus Moria was there's not much to it. I remember being disappointed reading it and trying to convince myself it was as good as the Lucci fight, because I was a kid at the time, so I wanted every arc to have an even more cool fight than the last arc for Luffy. But I think in retrospect, I appreciated that that was just an arc for the Strats to really get to shine, and show off a lot of like their new power-ups, stuff like that, like their abilities. So that was an important arc for them. So I think that I would not be surprised if Elbaf is a similar sort of scenario wherein, oh my god, yeah, wherein, what the hell? Yeah, I have not gotten that haircut. If Elbaf is a similar sort of scenario where I feel like Luffy may not be as much of a focal point in it, and I wonder if the Strats will get to shine a little bit more. And then I think the Emu will be reserved for Luffy, but the big thing is we know that Luffy's not even going to defeat Emu here. So I've got a lot to say on this whole situation. Eric, thanks to 2. Lol more, should I win the prediction? No, we didn't focus that much on Jinbei. Nobody won the prediction this week. Grizzly Adams, if you're here, you were close, but you predicted that I just did the chapter review bit earlier. So Grizzly Adams was close with what happened. We did a recap of the Sun Realm, and Grizzly Adams predicted that the Straw Hats would make a big entrance at the end. I don't think this qualifies as a big entrance, so I did not give it to Grizzly Adams. Obsidian Angel, thanks to the 2. Zoro's plan, I'm gonna cut really strong. Yeah. Oh, I didn't address the thing. I let my thought trail off about the maps. Let me finish this. Sean Easton, thanks to the 2. Zoro, I'm going to cut the branch. That wouldn't be that'd be a really bad idea, because then all the kids fall and die, right? Yeah, Zoro's plan is very straightforward, right? Zoro's not the most cerebral guy, right? I still remember the Pika fight, which was like, the chapter is literally called Tactics number 5 or something like that, and it's a full chapter of like Zoro being like, okay, how do I deal with Pika? And it's like, okay, he's going into strategy mode, exercising his battle IQ, and he lists a bunch of options that are basically all just like variations of of like, well, I could attack like this, or I could attack like that. Okay, fuck it. Tactics 5 is just I'll just fly over and cut him straight up. And it's like, all right, so really not that different than other scenarios, right? Meek, thanks for the 10. I hope you enjoyed the chapter. First chapter in many months I haven't translated, so I haven't even read it yet. LMAO, favorite part? My favorite part is actually Yarl. Yarl's speech got me going. I'm surprised people aren't more excited about that. Yarl's speech got me going. People are, I think, glossing over the fact that Elbaf is the first nation in One Piece to officially declare war against the world government that we have visited. We know that there's kingdoms that the Revolutionary Army has liberated from the world government control. I think that's a little bit different than... We need some more details on that. So obviously those countries have seceded from being part of the world government and everything like that. But I think Elbaf is the first nation that has declared that we are going to be in direct conflict with the world government from here on. And definitely in the Straw Hats journey so far, Elbaf, this is the first time, like, this is cool. This is the first time the Straw Hats have reached an island, and by the end of the storyline, it's like, all right, this island is going to war with the world government, with the Straw Hats at their side. That's really, really cool. This is the start of the final war, basically. Like, this is where the dominoes start to fall, in that nations beginning to turn against the world government. That this is it. Because we know people talk about in the back of our heads, like, oh yeah, when it's time to go to war against the world government, the Strats will have like Alabasta on their side, and then Fishman Island, and Dressrosa, and Wano, and Zo. But these are all like things that we know they're gonna happen, right? But these are all things we're kind of checking off. None of those things have actually happened yet. None of these nations are actually like Alabasta is not any, like, as far as we know, it's not just about to turn around and be like, hey, we're going to war against the world government. Same with Dressrosa. Alabasta probably will once they find out about the Cobra situation. But point being, Elbaf, this is actually a huge step. I think because we've taken for granted for so long that when the time comes, Straw Hat allies are going to turn against the world government, right? We know that's going to happen in the story, so we take it for granted. But this is actually the first time it's actually occurred in the story. that it's not just a hypothetical, like, oh yeah, when it's time it'll happen. Like, no, the time is now for Elbaf. Elbaf is like, fuck the world government, we're gonna go to war against them. And yeah, they're swinging, they're going in swinging alongside the Strahd. So I actually really like that. I like that quite a bit. I would also add, yeah, I think that's my favorite part of the chapter. I'm very excited for that. Yarl, by the way, let's pull this shit out. Yarl just took a jump up my Elbaf favorite character rankings as well. And plus the confirmation, 300 years ago, he was, how old is Yarl? One Piece Yarl age. He's 408 years old, so 408 divided by 3. What's that? 408 divided by 3. Oh my god! Yarl is 136 years old by human standards. Alright, I can't give him shit for that Big Mom scenario. Remember I used to shit on Yarl early on for like, he's weak or whatever? He's 136 years old by human standards. That's crazy. That's crazy. Anyway, best characters in Elbaf. Here, let me share this real quick. Hold on, I think audio might cut out for 1 second. Tiptio says, love the speech and hate the Gunko Oda gooning. Gunko's just looked like that this entire time. What's new? That's been her design for a little bit, right? That's been her design for a minute. Hold on. Is audio gonna cut for a second? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Alright, you guys should be able to hear. The average lifespan of One Piece humans is 141. I don't think that's the case. I feel like that's just... Isn't that just Korea? Justin, thanks for the 5, man. I like to believe that maybe Loki will be a war general to train Elbaf for war. Maybe some of the Strahds too before they have to leave. I think that'd be really cool. I also think there's a possibility, though, that Elbaf is destroyed by the end of the arc. I think there's a few possibilities here. Okay, anyway, so before we get into this, let me just clarify. I didn't get to finish this thought, so you guys are probably... I left you guys hanging. So I was between 2 video options for tomorrow. So I really want to talk about the matchups because there's a lot to delve into there. So that's happening in tomorrow morning's video. So watch out for that. And we've been tightening things up with the editor, so we will be able to get this Saturday's video out in the morning. So I'm excited for that. So far, it's been a little bit ad hoc with what we can do, and so it came out a little bit later in the day the last couple Saturdays. This time I think we got it down, so we should be able to all I have to do is basically stay up all night. So you guys know what I'm drinking right now? It's coffee, of course, but specifically it's cold brew, so I'm running on that at the moment. Anyway, what are the main things? Yeah, so I was between that, and that's the video I'm excited to talk about. Like, what are the matchups of Elbaf? Because I personally think I've got a pretty... I think I might go... No, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I do think that I've got a pretty good beat on the matchups for this that are probably going to shake out. So let's see if I'm right on that. Who knows? The other video I wanted to do, though, is about this one thing that I worry about for the final war of One Piece. And it's just like... Okay, how to explain this? First of all, praise, right? I'm very excited. Love this chapter. Loved how Oda's handled Elbaf in general. Really loving this arc, yada yada. Last stream we even talked about it. I think I've got Elbaf tracking to be one of my top 10 arcs in One Piece, and depending on the climax, could be much higher, right? Could make it to the top 5 or whatever, okay? Oda, phenomenal storyteller, phenomenal long-form storyteller, so much build-up, set up to Elbaf, yada yada. Here's where I think there's just a few things that are his Achilles heels that... One is too many characters and plot threads, right? So that's what we've talked about that a lot. The second is this, which is just the most bizarre, and it's a problem that's actually always been a thing, but it's exacerbated quite a bit when you've got more characters and plot threads. So when those map diagrams come up, there's not a single One Piece fan who's been following the series for any extended period of time, especially a manga reader, who sees those maps pop up and gets excited. If anything, you can kind of feel like a pit drop in your stomach where it's like, shit. Oda's pulling the diagrams out, right? So why is that? And I've thought about it a little bit or for some time, and it's a video I want to do at some point. Let's see. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt because I'm excited, and I think Elbaf has been handled really well so far, and I think the pacing's been clean, and the handling of characters has been clean. But whenever those diagrams come out, the whole, all of Oda's storytelling that he's set up starts to get a lot clunkier over the course of the rest of the arc through the climax. And Oda never seems to believe this is a problem. The long and short form of it is, because like the initial comment that prompted me to say this is like, and this is a very insightful little comment though, okay? It's a very insightful comment, which is basically, sorry, hold on. It's got to reload this. Shoot, I can't find the comment now, but I addressed it earlier in the stream. It was something like, somebody said basically like, when the maps come up, like, I don't even pay attention to where all the characters are. That's a very important point because it takes into account how people actually read stories. So, this is a One Piece exclusive thing, really. Like, the diagrams and stuff. Like, I've seen other manga, like, sometimes do it just to give a quick overview of, like, where characters are in, like, a big landscape, if there's a big war going on or whatever. But it's genuinely not necessary. That's the big thing. I truly feel like if you read other arcs, right? Like Oda obviously has amazing storylines, etc., and he does things way better than the vast majority of shonen. But in some specific areas, right? When I'm reading, like, let's say the Shibuya incident, right? Phenomenal, fast-paced, lots of action and lots of scenes happening all over the place. You don't actually need a ton of maps and diagrams explaining where everybody is, and you don't actually need to pause everything, take a step back, provide a lot of exposition, just recapping where people are. That's something that seems to happen a lot in Oda's bigger climaxes like Dressrosa and Wano in particular. There are hints of this even pre-timeskip. If you go back to Enies Lobby, there were lots of moments where the diagrams did start to come out, just to point out where Strats are, who's at the Bridge of Hesitation, who's at the Tower of Justice, etc. So it's always been a facet of Oda's writing. I do think that it was fine in those earlier storylines because we dealt with fewer characters, and at least with something like Enies Lobby, there's a general lot of momentum forward that needs to happen, physically, geographically, right? So like people are getting from this tower across this bridge over to this point where the Buster Call is coalescing, right? So like we do need some of that tracking, and it didn't feel like interfered a lot, right? But now that once we get to storylines like Dressrosa and Wano, some of the things that stopped, in my opinion, those storylines climaxes from flowing fluidly, and instead added a lot of like buffer chapters in between where not a lot is happening, where some pieces are being moved and like a little bit, rather than just allowing scenes to flow, is I think Oda really, really, for whatever reason, he feels the need to cut around a lot, and that's a big part of why the diagrams are a thing. He feels the need to like sort of move pieces like 5 inches and then move these pieces 5 inches and then move these pieces 5 inches, rather than simply allowing the things that he set up to flow, and then the next thing to flow, and then the next thing to flow. It feels like every few chapters there's just got to be a big stop to everything and just a recap of everything that's happening, and this is what's happening over here and here and here, and not a lot happens in those chapters. So that's my worry. I'm gonna wait and see if Elbaf also is afflicted with that. But it's like when I'm watching 1,000-Year Blood War, right? Like the big final season, or like season 3 or whatever. Lots of fights are happening all over the place. Season 2, lots of fights are happening all over the place. But there's not a constant. It's not like every other episode everything's pausing just to quickly bounce around everywhere to show a little bit of this, little bit of this, little bit of this. Show us a big map of where everything is. Those things don't actually matter that much to the reading experience, to the viewing experience. You can establish it once, and then it's mostly okay. I think Oda feels like he needs to keep reestablishing and reestablishing where characters are. And when he does this, he feels like he also has to add a little bit of new info, like, oh, this fight progressed like 10%, or this situation progressed like 10%. And that makes for a very clunky reading experience. I could go down the list of a lot of different storylines, like a lot of different manga that seem to do this aspect of things in particular better. Not to say that they're better than One Piece, or that One Piece doesn't have amazing climaxes in general. I'm just saying that this is one aspect that, like, I just don't get why Oda keeps doing it in this manner rather than just letting things flow. So I'm going to go forward with the benefit of the doubt and just assume that, okay, he needed to do this once to establish where everybody is, but I'm really hoping that after this, characters scatter, they go to their respective fights and locations, and then the story just organically flows, and every 3 chapters we don't have to pause for, like, this specific in-between chapter where we get the maps again and the explanations of, like, this and that, or this character's fight is moved forward 10%, etc. Does that make sense? Oh, people are saying I like the maps. Wait, is the audio quality bad? What's wrong with the audio quality? Is it too loud? Hello, 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 hello. Maybe I have it too close. People are saying I like the maps. I love the maps. I guess you could say that right now because it just started, but all I can say is that I have distinct memories both from Dressrosa and from Wano where a chapter would come out and people would be like, this chapter is fucking boring, because all it is basically a diagram reiterating where everybody is, explaining if somebody moved like 5 inches from point A to point B or something like that, and we cut around quickly to a bunch of fights, but nothing else really happens. I don't think Oda's method of how he handles climaxes where there's a lot of things happening at once is as fluid as I've seen from a lot of other mangaka. I'm not saying no maps. Oh, there's... Oh, I see. Here we go. Is that better? That should fix it. I'm not saying no maps, because it's good to get an idea once. And maybe once or twice again as the story goes. But if you notice, the map chapters generally, like throughout Dressrosa and Wano, are the ones where, if you go back historically in chapter threads, chapter discussions, etc., people are complaining that, okay, there's not a lot of shit happening. All right, continuing on. Hold on. The question, 89907, thanks a lot. Arguments for and against the Straw Hats losing here. I feel like this is supposed to feel triumphant, in my opinion. I think it's supposed to feel triumphant. I do hope that the Straw Hats get... It's just the vibe, right? Yarl's speech here, strong Dressrosa vibes. Like, remarkably similar vibes to Dressrosa, with Riku giving the big speech in the finale of Dressrosa, if you remember, to the people. And if you remember, Riku's speech, it's almost a direct mirror to Yarl's, because Oda likes to play on the same ideas a lot. In Riku's speech, Riku was basically like... Because people were now understanding, right, the truth of what happened that night when Doflamingo was manipulating Riku to act evil and do evil shit, right? So now Riku was like, now everyone's eyes are opened. Yarl was basically explaining the truth of what happened with Loki, which was that Loki had to kill, Harold was afflicted with the same Dami Reversi shit that they're seeing right now, right? So it's a similar scenario where, like, now people can see what the powers of the evil manipulator behind the scenes are, and then everybody understands what's going on, what took place in the past, yada yada, right? It's a very, very similar scenario. Hold on, let me write one thing, actually. Hold on. Yeah. What was I saying? I feel like this is supposed to be triumphant. I think it's supposed to feel like Elbaf standing up, rising up, yada yada. I think it's supposed to feel triumphant. The other part of it is, at the same time, I wonder if Elbaf itself will be destroyed by the end of the arc. I don't know. Looking at this, favorite characters, I'm bumping Yarl up. I think I like Yarl better. Elbaf's got some great characters, you know? I really like some of Elbaf's characters. It's introduced some phenomenal, like, all-time greats. I think Scopper Gaban, for me, I think he's out of the OG Pirate King trio. Out of the OG Pirate King trio, I'll say this. I got Roger last. Is my least favorite. Not that I don't like Roger, but it's just not. I just wasn't really feeling him in the whole God Valley flashback. Wasn't really feeling him. Between Scopper, Gaban, and Rayleigh, I don't know which one I like better. I like Scopper a lot at this point. He's just a great presence. Rayleigh is... Scopper or Rayleigh? I don't know who I like better. It's hard to say. It's genuinely hard to say. I hope I see them both together in action before the end of the story. But I might have Scopper. Rayleigh just has more... There's more time that Rayleigh's been a character in the story, right? He's been more of a long-term, ongoing presence, you know, from Saboti through the time skip, and then we're kind of checking in on him here and there, and then he pops up a lot throughout the story, both in Odin's flashback, recent God Valley, etc. Like, Odin's just this, like, great mainstay, long-running character. But Scopper in Elbaf is playing a bigger role than Rayleigh ever did for any extended period of time in the story, and I'm really liking Scopper's personality. Like, what's cool about Scopper... Tiptia says, did Morge miss my $5 super? No, I'm catching up on stuff. I see your next one is Correja. Because the last one I just answered was from the question. Thanks, man. What was I saying? Yeah, what's cool about Scopper is that, like, he's got such a fun, crazy, wacky side to his personality. And he can kind of be, like, wild and headstrong and brash like Roger. But he's also got this old wise man thing going for him as well. Like, he's got a nice combination of personality traits. Tiptio, thanks for the 5, man. Correa is 141, but Oda said she was superhuman, so that it is only her face that looks old. That is why her body doesn't look a day over 46. Yeah, I mean, Correa is not the norm, right? Most One Piece characters don't actually live to, like, 140-something, right? Justin, thanks for the 2. Elbaf destroyed, do you mean by Uranus? I think either by Imu's weapon or by Loki. I think that there's a scenario where Loki actually has to destroy Elbaf. I just haven't fully figured out what that might be yet, but I feel like there's lots of little hints that Loki might actually end up destroying Elbaf by the end of it. But not in like an evil ha-ha-ha sort of way, but rather something that actually is good for the story. Who knows? Let's get the streamlights up to 50 real quick. Pool of Dead. Thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 25 months, man. People who say that One Piece doesn't have filler, which makes it better than Bleach / Naruto, is so dumb. One Piece filler is the worst because you can't skip it. Like, you can just skip Naruto filler arcs. Yeah, that's the big thing I don't understand about... I will just never understand the complaints about the Naruto filler. Because I get that it can be really frustrating week to week. Because you get... I think the week-to-week experience probably really fucked people over. Because it's like, you never know... That's probably the biggest thing, right? Like, you're in the flow of like, oh, got an exciting episode. Okay, what happens next week's episode? And then it's fucking filler. And then you don't know how many episodes of filler you got to deal with. That's the frustrating thing. I get that complaint. The lack of predictability about it. But if you're actually just viewing Naruto from start to finish, it's infinitely easier to just skip the Naruto filler. Because it's just like, there's no thought to it, right? You're just watching the episode and then it's like, okay, I got to skip the next 2 episodes or skip the next 4 episodes, but then you just do that and that's fine, right? That's the same as like when you're binging One Piece pre-time skip, when there are a lot more filler arcs. You skip the filler, right? You cannot skip filler when it's baked into the episode and it's like you're watching a scene, but the scene's being padded out, or they're like repeating a gag over and over and it's like, okay, is this filler? Is this not filler? To me, that's inherently worse because like... The Naruto filler argument is just dumb because it's just, you don't have to watch those episodes. But if you're watching One Piece and it's in episode filler, then suddenly your viewing experience is either like terrible or you're like hands always on the remote and like having to be a very active viewer where like every few minutes you're like, okay, this scene feels like it's filler. Yeah, it's filler. Okay, we skip a little bit. Okay, got to the next canon scene. Okay, but now this canon scene's dragging things out. Yada, yada, right? I just don't see the argument because it's the same as seasonal anime. It's literally the same as... filler doesn't exist unless you want to actually, like, filler episodes don't actually exist unless you want to watch them, right? Like, if Naruto was seasonal, then it would be the same thing, even in the weekly experience to some degree. It's just like, okay, we've got a filler arc coming. It's the same as just having a season break for the series, right? What really matters is that the quality of the episodes that are actually canon aren't suffering. So I'll just never understand that argument whatsoever. Because it's like, if we're watching a series what's a series everybody loves? Like people are loving Jujutsu Kaisen right now, right? Jujutsu Kaisen, if it had all of the canon episodes, but then it goes on break for some time, right? If during the break it had dropped a bunch of filler episodes, it's functionally the same viewing experience as if it just has a season break. Does that make sense? Like, imagine season 2 dropped, everybody watched that, and then during the period between season 2 and season 3, it was just a bunch of filler. And then we got season 3, right? Viewing wise, it's the same shit. You're just not watching new canon episodes during that time, right? What's the difference between having no episodes versus having filler episodes? You just don't have to watch any of it. Does that make sense? Now, obviously, Naruto and Bleach's production quality isn't the same as the seasonal anime, but I'm saying in terms of viewing experience, like, filler just doesn't. Filler episodes are stupid to complain about because it's just the same as the series going on break, which is something that nobody has a fucking problem with when it comes to seasonal anime. But for some reason, when it comes to weekly stuff, people are like, oh my god, it's not coming out weekly for this period of time. It's like, just imagine it's going on break, because that's what it is. You can watch the filler or you can not watch the filler. It's fucking optional. It just makes no sense to complain about something that's fucking optional. It's not optional when it's in the episode itself. I don't know. Jacob says, that's why anyone watching Naruto fresh now doesn't complain, but us week to week back then were suffering. Yeah, and you week to week people were just, like, irritating as fuck, because it's like, oh my god, I have to watch another episode of, like, this Mangekyo Sharingan shit. It's just like, shut up and just wait then for when it's over. Us One Piece fans have to sit down and watch, like, like 50 million reaction shots per episode because our Toei doesn't want to do filler. Year plus filler in the final war arc, insane. But it's the same as it going on a season break. It's just the same as the anime taking a break for a year. It's the same thing. There's no actual problem with that. Just don't watch the filler. Just don't watch the filler. It's just so simple. No one is forcing you to watch it. Just be like, oh, Naruto's going on break, and it's putting out optional episodes during those break if I feel like watching something. You don't have to watch it. That's just the stupidest shit. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Alexandra says L take, to be honest. Why is that an L take? The filler isn't mandatory. It's just the anime going on break so that it can have well-paced episodes when it comes back. It is fucking stupid to be like, no, we don't want a break and then well-paced episodes. We would rather have no break and just shittily paced canon episodes. It doesn't make sense to prefer that. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone be happy about your favorite anime going on a 1-year break? So that the quality is better. So that you don't have bad pacing for the episodes that, like, what the fuck? By that logic, it's like, well, then why don't they put out an episode every day? Just make the quality really fucking low. Why have to wait a week, right? Like, let's turn these episodes around every 3 days. Why do we have to take a break, right? I don't care how low the quality is, how terrible the pacing is, how bad the animation is. Just give me more episodes faster, right? You already accept that you need some break time for the production of quality episodes, right? You understand? Like, in fact, the entire anime industry, even One Piece, is now adapting the seasonal format to give breaks because every fucking popular anime at this point recognizes that it's just better to space things out to give higher quality episodes. Nobody wants bad pacing. Pool of Dead, thanks to the 5. Crazy thing is, when they use peak animation during a filler, why not save that for canon? Like, no one gives a fuck about Tamari versus Konohamaru. I would agree with that take. I think just try zero effort for the filler, personally. Sheriff Laffy, thanks for bringing Yonko to your member for 40 months. Is the Yarl redemption arc complete for you, Morge? I love Yarl. I would love to see a little flashback of him. I wonder if he was stronger than than Harold. I wonder if that's possible. Because it really sounds like that means that Elbaf has always had one character at least at Pirate King level, like, all the time, you know? Taptio says, yeah, but yearly anime that do filler arcs are worse than seasonal anime. I agree, because the ideal is seasonal. But at the same time, yearly anime that do filler are better than anime that don't do filler. Because you can literally just compare the quality of, like, One Piece's pacing to Naruto's canon episodes pacings. And Naruto's canon pacing is just, fundamentally better. Like, I don't think anyone would debate that. I cannot believe people, like, watching Dressrosa or like Fishman Island or Punk Hazard and like watching like a million reaction shots and fucking slideshow shit or whatever and then being like, well, at least we're getting an episode every week. I would much rather this than getting actually good episodes mixed in with filler arcs. That doesn't make any sense. Morge cooking, we need one episode 2x a day at both at both 11s in a day. Growth Stonks, thanks for the 5. I think the plan for One Piece anime going bi-seasonal is to also have Wit be bi-seasonal, so we end up getting One Piece weekly, but it's way higher quality. Yeah, everything One Piece is doing right now, like, keep in mind this. Everything One Piece is doing right now is essentially having to hard course correct for literally decades of commitment to this absolute mentality of, like, always weekly episodes, right? And as few filler arcs as possible. That's where we get to the point where we're at with the One Piece anime, where it's basically like, we can't fucking get new viewers easily like this. We have to overhaul the whole thing. So, like, I've never seen an anime production have to do this, which is, one, the current anime, which has been weekly for a long time, okay, we're going to put that on a seasonal, bi-seasonal schedule, right? So it's like, okay, so they're hard course correcting there, but then it's like, okay, two, everything that we have pretty much post-time skip is damn near unwatchable for the average person, right? So we actually have to remake all that, like, in real time. Like, we're not waiting for One Piece to end and doing a Dragon Ball Z Kai. We're going to remake One Piece to make it more palatable and actually fix the pacing right now in real time, right? So, one, we're going to go seasonal, okay? So, long time coming, but they finally do it. Two, we acknowledge that we fucked up with everything post-time skip, so we're going to fix the pacing for all of that. And then three, we acknowledge that these things on their own also might not just be enough, so we're just simultaneously, we're going to remake the anime from scratch, from the beginning, to update it for modern standards. Do you guys, do you understand what a fucking indictment of the One Piece's anime and the way that it's been doing things this all is? Because this is all a shit ton of money and time and investment that's being spent on fixing something that you guys are claiming is not a problem. Toei itself, this is essentially like them hanging up their hats and being like, yeah, this is what we've got at this point is just like a fucking mess. We've got to redo. We're going to fix things going forward, so we're going to go seasonal from here going forward. But we know that everything from post-time skip onwards is really abhorrently paced, right? So that needs to be fixed. We're going to fix that as fast as we can. But we are also, understand that might take too long. So just to get in as many new viewers as possible, we're also redoing the beginning. And we're redoing the whole series from scratch. That is a shit ton of time and money that's being spent. You notice there's no other anime that's having to do this? You notice that nobody else is having to do this process? That's because other anime do fucking filler. Other anime either went to seasonal a long time back, or they just had normal fucking filler arcs instead of trying to drag a chapter or 2/3 of a chapter across an episode week after week and then force the filler into the episodes. One Piece is at a stage where it has the potential to really, really, really blow up and become the most popular anime of all time. Become the most popular manga and anime. Right? You've got so many big time content creators getting into it. Obviously the One Piece live action, all of this stuff, household name, great stuff going for it. The one thing holding One Piece back is its own fucking anime. That's why they've got to do 3 separate projects on it at the same time. This is not even a debate. The simple fact that they're having to do all this is proof in and of itself that whatever they were doing up till now is not working. Because the studio's not doing all this if everything is working. Like, you think Jujutsu Kaisen's sitting there being like, we need to redo the anime. We got to redo it again from fucking scratch because we've just fucked this whole thing up so far. No. Anime that are working in getting in new viewers at crazy numbers do not have to do this. Anyway. And you guys might be like, well, One Piece's anime is really popular right now, though. Like, so many people are getting into it. Yes, that's true. But it's at the same time the biggest... it's like we've got the best thing in the world, and the sheer quality of the long-term storytelling on its own is what's bringing people in, and word of mouth and things like that, right? The thing that's holding back a true flood of, like, everybody fucking watching this is the anime. Like, that's the case. That like, it's despite the quality of the anime, it's the strength of the storytelling and its great moments that are still pulling people in despite the anime. And everyone involved in the One Piece IP recognizes that, which is why they're doing this huge overhaul. There's no other reason to do that if the anime is actually good right now. It's not. If the anime was good right now, there'd be zero need to do this. All right, continuing on. Let's get Streamlabs up to 50 real quick. Pool of Dead 3088, thanks for the 10. Sorry I'm being so negative, but I legit cannot stand Usopp anymore. Why does he act like a Looney Tunes character every scene in Elbaf? Like, can he be serious for 1 second? Sorry, I needed to get this off my chest. I think, watch out for tomorrow's video. I'm happy I can now say watch out for tomorrow's video, rather than watch out for, like, next Tuesday's video, because tomorrow sounds a lot sooner than next Tuesday, obviously, right? So watch out for tomorrow's video. I think Usopp has a really good role to play coming up. I think there's a lot of arcs in One Piece where Usopp can be rather annoying early on, and then he goes on to have some of his best stuff. Great example, Dressrosa. If you read the first 40 chapters of Dressrosa, it is genuinely Usopp at his fucking worst, man. Like, it is Usopp whining, complaining, like, literally scheming to trick the Tontatas and planning on how best to abandon them from the get-go. He's lying to them, pretending he's a hero, yada yada, and the whole time he's like, I'm just gonna ditch these fuckers. It's Usopp at his worst. Most people don't remember that part anymore, because once it got time for Usopp to actually have his moments, it was a fast turnaround. Like, Usopp gets so many of his best scenes after he turns around and decides to help fight Sugar. Everything after that, knocking out Sugar, like the scene where he turns around to knock out Sugar, great. Then from then on, we get all the God Usopp stuff, and Usopp's best sniping moment in the entire story. My personal favorite chapter in Dressrosa, by the way. It's a very rare chapter in One Piece, because Oda actually almost never does this, and I wish he would do it more, because he's actually very good at it when he commits to it. But Usopp sniping Sugar, that chapter is genuinely some of Oda's best character writing work. Because Oda doesn't usually like to go into deep internal monologues with characters, right? Like, we might get some, but they're short and sweet. That was like a full chapter dedicated to Usopp, what's going on inside. And you walk through his whole thought process. The whole scene is very, very slow-paced, but slow-paced in a good way, where it just feels like time slows down. You can really feel and understand him as a character and sympathize with him. And then he unlocks observation Haki in the moment. It's probably... that's my favorite Haki Bloom moment in the series. I think... yeah, low-key. I think that is the best Haki Bloom moment in One Piece that we've had. I think it's a better written scene than Zoro versus King, Luffy versus Kaido. Luffy kind of just wakes up. He's like, I got it. I figured out Advanced Conqueror's Haki. Like, the Usopp observation Haki is, like, genuinely a beautifully written scene. This is kind of what I would love to see more of in the future. Like, this is the type of writing I would love if... it's not like Oda's forte necessarily, but when he does it, he's really good at it. Let's see. So it's like probably chapter 759 or something like that. Is Secret Plan? No, I'm a little off. Probably a little bit later. Oh, shit. Where's the sniping scene? Oh, I'm too early. 7:55. But yeah, like, I'm getting a little bit off track here. But the point being, Usopp, when he really buckles down and goes all out, right? When Oda really buckles down and goes all out writing Usopp, then it usually doesn't matter how annoying he was earlier in the arc. What stands out is when he does get those really, really strong, serious moments. If you go back to Alabasta, Usopp's kind of a bitch for a lot of Alabasta. He really is. He's actually a bitch for most of the fucking chopper fight. For most of the chopper fight, he's a bitch. Like, he's, or not, the chopper Mr. 4 fight. He's really, really annoying in that. Like, genuinely, very annoying. Hold on. Where's this? Yeah, he's genuinely very annoying. He's trying to escape the fight the whole time. He's not in it. It feels like he's gonna fucking abandon Chopper and stuff like that. But then it doesn't matter at the end, because when it comes down to it, when it's time for his moment, it's amazing. It's iconic. Usopp declaring that Luffy will be the king of the pirates. I won't let you laugh at that, right? Like, I won't let you laugh at my friend's dream. So with Usopp, I give him a lot of leeway, because I know that very often Oda can write him in a manner that's very, very annoying, but almost all of that is erased when Oda buckles down and actually writes the scenes that matter for him, because it kind of just mentally, like, nobody remembers. I don't think, like, when people think of the Usopp fight against the Mr. 4 duo, I don't think people even remember how annoying Usopp was against in the early stages of that fight. It's pretty pathetic. I don't think people remember how annoying Usopp was for the first 40 chapters of Dressrosa. What stands out is, like, the God Usopp, like, the stuff that he actually gets when it's time for him to shine. That's one of my biggest complaints about Usopp in Wano, though, which is that Wano is probably the most irritating Usopp's ever been in an arc. He's straight up talking about how he'll sell out his friends if he's captured, how he doesn't give a shit about the Alliance and stuff, and he has that running train of thought for the entire arc. And then Oda never gives him, like, a moment to redeem himself, which I think is kind of crazy. But I would say, like, just have faith. Have faith in Usopp. Have faith in Oda that he's planned something really good. And tomorrow's video will hopefully help clarify what it looks like has been set up for Usopp. Like, look, Usopp's being fucking annoying here. You're kidding me? They're all coming after us. We gotta scram, yada yada. The entire kingdom is trying to kill us. So Oda often he's playing up Usopp's irritating stuff, right? And then probably, I want to say maybe here? Yeah. And then we get, I think, the best written chapter of Dressrosa, genuinely. So Sugar's there, and I just love this scene. I love this scene, because, like, that was Usopp. We just saw Usopp, total coward, yada yada, goofy, blah blah blah. But then when he realizes what's about to happen, total about turn. This is great writing. Do you understand the severity of the situation? Blah, blah, blah. Meaning, if Sugar touches him, we'll forget about Luffy. I can't stand that my comrades could disappear. We've got to stop her. We cannot snipe her. Like, look at this shit. The citizens, this is what Usopp was afraid of earlier on, too. Everyone's coming up to attack them, but Usopp doesn't even give a shit. Sees them, blah, blah, blah. Usopp's not even focused. This is so cool. This is like one of Oda's best scenes because it's just so slow. It's slow, so well paced. And you never hear Usopp talk about this. How many bars, blah, blah, blah. Sugar's height. How big are the bottom panes? 20 inches wide, blah, blah. Sugar's right in front of them and closing. Its target is beyond the wall. If I miss, Luffy's gone. Guess what, Luffy? I don't want to hit the seas without you, man. I hate Viz's translations. Who else is going to save this kingdom? Observation, Haki. I can see their spirit. Breeze from west to east. Wind speed 4. A slight tailwind. Got him 1. First booster. Exploding star. Projectile rises. Rear end detaches. After 2 seconds, second booster fires. Wrapper falls. Projectile flies horizontal. Headed for the lower left pane of the window and through the wall and onward and straight downward to the target. But not for a direct hit. This special projectile. And then we got a classic Usopp gag at the end. Luffy, you don't even need to know. As long as you're safe, keep going. This was just a great scene. This is phenomenal stuff for Usopp. I definitely think it's the best Haki Bloom moment that we have in the story in terms of writing, because you actually get inside the character's head, what they're thinking. There's a lot more emotional build-up to it. And you can kind of feel like when the moment Usopp awakens the observation Haki, it feels like right. Like it feels like this is the most locked in that we've seen him. Everything's on the line. Like you can see the strength of his spirit and everything like that. And he's putting his all into this one snipe. And it feels like he's so focused that you can literally feel him like awakening the sixth sense in terms of being able to see what he's trying to shoot, right? Like, I think this whole scene is just perfectly done. Like, I think it's the best written chapter in Dressrosa and one of the best written chapters for a character in the Straw Hats in One Piece. So, long story short, like, just have faith in Oda for Usopp. Because when Oda locks in to write Usopp well, usually all of the annoying stuff that Usopp's done beforehand quickly becomes forgotten. All right, hold on. I got a lot of supers to catch up on. First, let's get the stream likes up to 60 real quick, or 100 real quick. Sorry. Shakir, thanks for the 5. With the Stormlight TV show finally announced, you can finally get into the Cosmere. The Stormlight TV show. Oh shit. Who is making that? Because I've heard terrible things about the Rings of Power and the Wheel of Time. Apple TV. Is Apple TV good? How's their track record? I don't know if I watch anything that's got Apple TV. Is Severance Apple TV? I haven't watched Severance because we don't have Apple TV, but I've heard good things. Lil Emu, thanks for the 5. Strahd won the bidding war for the Army of Giants. That's actually really funny. BTW, I beat Genichiro Ashina last week and lol, trying to breathe before the rest of the game. Congratulations! I told you the third phase is not actually too different. It just psychologically is like very, very pressure intensive. Yeah, the cool thing I would say is that the cool thing about, I'll give you a tip, I would say, which is, and it's not a spoiler tip whatsoever. What happens, from what I recall, after Genichiro is the story, the world opens up a little bit, so you have a few different routes you can go. This is the only time in Sekiro that there's like a little bit of branching paths, you know, like optionality. Definitely, that if you actually want a breather, right? You want a bit of a breather after Genichiro Ashina and you want to do a natural difficulty curve, I hard recommend doing the Senpo Temple route next. That is, I think, a well-earned... It's still difficult. Sekiro never stops being difficult, but it... I think that's one of the cool things about Sekiro. The difficulty curve is very well mapped, so it always feels just the right... Like, you can beat Genichiro, and there will be harder things than Genichiro, for sure, that come, but it's never... I think the ramping of the difficulty feels good, so your skill is always increasing alongside the skill of the boss, or the difficulty of the bosses. So by the time you get to the next truly hard boss, you will be good. But there are some hard mini-bosses along the way before the next hard bosses. So I would say... I definitely think I would recommend doing Senpo Temple next. That will make the difficulty curve feel even. And then after that, the next two areas can be... Senpo Temple's not easy. But I definitely think if you want a reprieve in terms of like boss difficulty, I think take that route. It's good. Take that, then do the valley. And then do... I don't spoil you in a bunch of stuff. But do Senpo Temple next. Just make sure you're on track to that. Yeah. You'll feel good doing that. Taptio Treviso, thanks for the 2. This is because Toei min-max milked One Piece for 25 years. Dude, that's a very, very, very good way to put it. They essentially min-maxed One Piece for 25 years. Then they realized, oh my god, this series is fucking blowing up globally. People are loving the Netflix show and stuff like that. Quick, do we have like... Is there a nice, easy way for them to get into the anime and really enjoy the story? And then they're like, oh my god, what have we done to ourselves over the last 25 years? we actually got to look good now for these new people showing up, you know? Knut Worgen, thanks to the 2. Jin Bum with a 1 billion plus bounty can't even cut a rope. Man, yeah, I don't know, man. Jinbei's, he's not joining the monster trio, that's for sure. Henchme987, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for a month. Yeah, Usopp's Haki bloom was cool, but does he even know he used Haki? If not, what's the point? It's the final saga and the Strats are still Haki bums. Well, I feel like that opens a good avenue for him to maybe grow this arc, right? Zoro doesn't even know he used Conqueror's Haki. So if Usopp's a bum, Zoro's a bum too. I think that's part of the way growth works, right? Like, Luffy didn't know he was using Conqueror's Haki back in like Sabaody, Impel Down, Marine Ford. That's why he then had to get it down, you know? So I think that's the cool part of the story, that Usopp unconsciously unlocked Observation Haki. And now this would be a great opportunity for him to actually get it down, you know? Bawa, thanks for the 10. Usopp for sure has a big moment soon, since Luffy at the start of the arc called him out for not fighting the big cat. Good point, good point. I imagine he might take out the nightmare creatures, maybe even face his own nightmare. I think there's something a little bit even juicier than that around the corner, so watch out for tomorrow's video. But I definitely agree Usopp should get a really big moment here. Aztekari, thanks for the 5. I find killing him versus Loki very interesting because he might bring Loki fear, his mother. That is an interesting idea. We did see that there is this gag happening of the giants fearing their mothers, and that's one of the things that appears as the nightmare creatures for a lot of them. I could see that happening. Tala, good to see you. Thanks for the 5. Glad the rallying/inspiring Elbaf to fight speech came from someone with knowledge on Elbaf's history like Yarl and not Usopp as most were predicting. I think Usopp will be a rallying force for a lot of the giants at some point in this arc, but this, I agree, is the moment for somebody, an Elbaf native, to speak for Elbaf. I agree. Julian Reed, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 2 months. Doesn't Imunko have 2 devil fruits right now? The arrow powers are still active, and assuming that the book is also a fruit, that would be a dual fruit wield. I don't know if the book is a fruit, but I get what you're saying. Like, Imu should have Imu's own powers, and then obviously Gunko's powers as well. So that is a really, really good point. So I hope we get some clarification on how strong Imu is when Imu possesses certain bodies. Like when Imu possessed Saturn, at first it was a mix between Imu and Saturn, but then after a bit it just kind of became just plain Imu, right? So I wonder if we'll see that with Gunko. Aether, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 34 months. Usopp can see souls with his Haki. We saw it when he aimed his shot. I can see him being integral in downing Shiryu or Katarina Devon. That's an interesting idea. I mean, I feel like it's going to be Van Augur that's Usopp's opponent, but that would be cool if he's involved against Shiryu. I'm still baffled by Shiryu's whole existence, like his ability. Like, he literally got to pick a fruit, and you pick the invisibility fruit in a world where observation Haki exists. So I don't know. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 5. Yarl has already galvanized the courage of the giants. Usopp hasn't reached an emotional low to come back from. What's left for him? A sniping feat? I think once the fights happen, then we could get a solid emotional low. I think that's when that could happen. Because, we got the pep talk just right here, but we still have to actually go through the battle against pretty overwhelming forces, if we're being frank, right? Like, if you're just to stack up, what I like about Elbaf right now is that, first of all, Grizzly Adams, I'm sorry you were the closest to winning this week's chapter predictions, but I'm sorry you did not quite win them, simply because part of your prediction was that there would be a big entrance by the Strats at the end, and I don't think that we got a big entrance by them at the end. So I'm not gonna. I did not give it to you for that, but you were the closest this week. Anyway, I think one of the cool things about Elbaf is that Elbaf isn't one. I would definitely agree that Elbaf is not like the heaviest arc. It's not like the God Valley flashback was cool and everything, but the arc itself hasn't been too heavy for the Straw Hats, right? Like, not. I like it better than some of the previous arcs in that aspect, in that, like, okay, at least it had a better low point than, like, Egghead. Like, at least we had a point where, like, a lot of the Strats were defeated and things were looking kind of dire for the country, even if everyone rallied pretty quick. So I like it better than Egghead in that, even compared to Wano, which had literally no point. Like, there was no low point in Wano, no point where the Strats kind of experienced a point of failure or anything like that, right? Elbaf at least had that. We haven't had that for the Strats since Whole Cake Island. So Elbaf is a step in the right direction, right? The final war is where I'm hoping things get really, really heavy for the Straw Hats. But if Elbaf, this is the best we're getting, that's cool. It'll be a fun arc. I still think, right? The way things will play out. And we got to keep in mind it's build up towards the final war, so I'm giving it a lot of leeway in terms of how dramatic the stakes go. That being said, I do think that we could get a sort of similar situation like I made a lot of points of comparison to Thriller Bark, where like Thriller Bark, the first half wasn't that heavy, and we got a low point. You know, the Strahds got captured, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji got their shadows taken, yada yada, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna get the shadows back. The rest of the arc isn't that heavy, but we do get lots of injections of moments where like things do get pretty rough for the Straw Hats. Usopp's fight against Perona was really, really difficult, right? Like all it can take sometimes is like a really difficult fight. Similarly, the Oars scenario had some difficult moments, especially early on for the Straw Hats, and then of course the whole Kuma thing at the end, right? So there was stuff, right? At the end of the day, if you don't have a heavy midpoint of the arc, it's pretty much impossible for the arc to become that dramatically, moving, Like, I would never argue that Thriller Bark is one of the heaviest arcs of One Piece or something, especially after coming off any slobby. But Elbaf doesn't need to be that. Like, it doesn't need to be any slobby or whatever. I'm looking forward to a solid arc that focuses on the Straw Hats, gives us some good fights. It had a decent midpoint, and a great launching off point for the final war, that's where I hope that things get really, really dramatic, right? So those are my hopes. Yeah, those are my hopes. But I agree Usopp hasn't reached an emotional low to come back from. We can still see things happen over the course of this next coming battle. And as for what's left for him, again, just watch tomorrow's video. I have some bold predictions for Usopp. Powerful NL, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 33 months, man. It's getting harder and harder to defend Usopp after Brook stealing Sanji's Mr. Prince, solo ops, and post time skip. Brook really did steal that from Sanji, didn't he? Fuck. That's rough. Yeah, that's really rough. Brook really did take that. Man. All right, let's get the street likes up to 100 real quick. Let's get the street likes up to 100. Brook really took that. I mean, look, Sanji's probably going to get a power up here. Usopp hasn't had the opportunity yet. I think we got to all just like wait and see a little bit with Usopp, because I don't think he's had we need to see how the battle plays out. Like, I do hope for some better writing for him by the end of this, but I do believe that Oda's got some good stuff up his sleeve for Usopp. Kobe couldn't perceive Shiryu, but Kobe might not have had observation Haki on. That's a big thing that people don't remember. Characters don't always have observation Haki on. Observation Haki, it's the same way like characters don't always have armament Haki on. Haki, like, it's established in the Luffy Katakuri fight, constantly using Haki drains you, right? That's why characters aren't just walking around with their Conqueror's Haki, like, always knocking people around them out, right? That's why, like, Luffy's not always walking around with, like, coated in armament Haki, right? You gotta turn Haki on, right? There's, like, a little clip from Rick and Morty, actually, back when Rick and Morty used to be good, which is, I just remember it because I find it funny. It's like early on, like, it's like Rick hands Morty like some anti-gravity boots or whatever, and Morty's like, oh boy, anti-gravity boots, and then he just like falls off a cliff, and then Rick's like, the boots have to be turned on. They gotta be turned on, Morty. That's how Haki works. It's already established in the story. When characters don't sense something, with observation Haki, that doesn't mean that, oh my god, this character's immune to observation Haki. It means the character wasn't using observation Haki in that instance. Unless you're Big Mom. Yeah, Kaido and Big Mom are great examples of the exceptions that prove the rule, right? Kaido and Big Mom, for whatever reason, just cannot be damaged by stuff if they're not expecting it, because they're just always coated with Haki, and that's just a them thing, right? Most other characters aren't like that, right? Luffy, if you just catch him off guard, you can stab him. Zoro, if you catch him off guard, you can stab him. I'm sure, like, Shanks, if you catch him off guard, you could, like, ask a Sea King, Queen went invisible against Sanji. That, look, if Sanji didn't turn on observation haki right there, that's an Oda writing thing, right? But by all reasonable understanding of the story, being invisible should not prevent you from being sensed by observation haki. Because otherwise, how the fuck does Fujitora do anything? I mean, we literally saw Luffy fighting Katakuri with his eyes closed, right? So there's not really... We already know that being able to see someone is irrelevant to observation haki. Septia Treviso, thanks for the 2. Is Usopp going to get a moment equals raid is going to fail? Look, guys, the raid is going to fail. Let's say that was a prediction that goes against the grain, right? Usopp is going to get a moment is something that, like, Oda himself has been, like, hyping up in the story, right? I feel like the majority of the reader base was already expecting Usopp to get something good in Elbaf because it's been talked about so much. He's the one that's always been excited about Elbaf and talking about how, like, that's really important for his journey to becoming a brave warrior of the sea. So I don't view this as, like, a raid failed thing. That was, like, a prediction that goes against the grain. To me, I think, like, the take that is popular or has been popular for a long time is that Usopp is going to get something. I'm just pointing out why I support that happening. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 2. What are the odds that Zoro's plan is a gag? Well, let's remember this. The first of Zoro's famous plans in the story was that he and Usopp play rock, paper, scissors, and then loser cuts their arm off as a means to getting out of the handcuffs. That's one of my favorite Zoro moments in the story. It's like... Oh, man, that was good. That was like... The comedic timing of that, especially the anime, was beautiful. It was just like... Usopp, I've got a plan. Or Sogeking, I've got a plan. We play rock, paper, scissors. The loser cuts their arm off. And then Usopp's like, what the fuck? He's like, well, you didn't hear the rest of the plan. The loser then takes their arm and runs to Chopper, and he'll sew it back on. And Usopp's like, we're not fucking stuffed dolls. It's a really good gag, and then it's immediately followed up by, like, brief pause. Zoro's like, I've got another plan. And Usopp's like, I don't want to fucking hear it. Yeah, so Zoro's not the most strategic. I think the last time that he had a truly successful plan was against Pika, and that's because the plan boiled down to, well, what if you just threw me across the island to get to Pika, and then I'll cut him up, right? So that's kind of Zoro's planning, you know? We were also excited for Zoro and Wano, says Tomeki Doll. Well, I would say that Zoro did get some good stuff in Wano. It was just nowhere near what we thought we were getting for the character. And pretty much all of Act 2 was just like random fluff that was irrelevant to his character, right? So Zoro and Wano Act 2, or Zoro and Wano in general, right? Like, he got a good fight against King. I guess that's it. But he honestly could have gotten that in any arc. There was nothing specific about Wano that was important for Zoro, right? Now, the difference is that with Wano, most of the hype for Zoro and Wano was reader-fueled, in that Zoro really only had one quote about what he's going to do in Wano, which is at the end of Zou, he said, I'll round up the Wano samurai for you. That's it. That's the only time that Zoro's really been, like, said something specific about Wano. Beyond that, it was mainly readers who were like, Wano is going to be Zoro's arc. Wano is going to be Zoro's arc. Because, and I think we had good reason to believe that. It's the land of swordsmen, right? And then once we get to Wano, there is a lot of Zoro stuff, like, technically there. It's like Ryuma. Like, turns out Zoro's the descendant of Ryuma. Zoro's, like, from Wano. This is homeland, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff in there, but it never really all came together in a meaningful way, right? It was all just random fluff for Zoro, right? And then the King fight is unrelated to everything in there, right? But I'm saying before the Wano arc started, Zoro wasn't talking up Wano much. He just said that line about the samurai. That's it. And then it was really we readers who were like, the land of swordsmen, the land of samurai, that's going to be big for Wano. Usopp and Elbaf is very different. Usopp actually had a full arc, Little Garden. Like, that's an entire arc dedicated to building this deeply personal connection for Usopp to Elbaf, right? That's actually, like, it becomes a major part of his overall dream to become a brave warrior of the sea. He says, basically, that I want to become a brave warrior of the sea, And by going to this land, I'll be able to understand better what that means, right? So that's established in Little Garden, right? Going to Elbaf almost becomes equal, like it becomes part and parcel of Usopp's overall dream of becoming Brave Warrior of the Sea, right? It's practically like when Zoro says he wants to become world's strongest swordsman, right? Defeating Mihawk becomes tied into that dream, right? So with Usopp, it's kind of the same thing. I want to become a Brave Warrior of the Sea, and in Little Gardens, then establish that, like, okay, by going to Elbaf and understanding the warriors there, that will allow me to become a Brave Warrior of the Sea. So it's intrinsically tied together, right? And then that's reiterated over the course of the story, because then we get to, like, Enies Lobby, and Usopp's meeting Oimo and Kashi, and he's regaining, like he's reiterating how important it is for him to go to Elbaf. And by the way, Enies Lobby was the next most important arc for Usopp's character. Enies Lobby was a hugely important arc for Usopp's character. He's like arguably he's probably the third most important stride in that arc after like Robin and Frankie, right? Like Enies Lobby, it's basically an Usopp arc combined with a Robin arc, right? And again, that's the arc where Elbaf stuff comes in. And then coincidentally, the next big arc that I would call an Usopp arc is Dressrosa, right? Dressrosa is the next big Usopp arc where Usopp's the one who takes out Sugar. He becomes God Usopp, 5 stars. They build a bronze statue of him. He saves the day, defeats Sugar again. The Grand Fleet pledges themselves to Luffy because of Usopp. That's a huge Usopp storyline, as we just saw with the panels I shared earlier, right? And like clockwork, end of Dressrosa, Usopp's talking about Elbaf again because Usopp meets Hadruden and Usopp's excited about Elbaf, yada yada, right? So throughout the story, Oda is always like it's very structured where it's not the readers just being like, Usopp said something about Elbaf once, therefore Elbaf's going to be important for Usopp. It's a recurring thing in story that Usopp himself is talking about how important Elbaf is for him, right? Very different from the Zoro, like Zoro and Wano. Once we were in Wano, there was like a lot of stuff that seemed set up for him but then went to nothing, right? But pre-getting to Wano, there wasn't really anything technically in the story where it's Oda signposting that Wano is going to be important for Zoro. I think there's that one line that he has at the end of Zo, right? Most of the fuel pre-Wano in terms of reader excitement for Zoro and Wano and the assumptions that Wano is going to be Zoro's arc, that came from us. That came from the reader base. It was just like, this is a no-brainer. Zoro, swordsman, land of swordsmen. This is going to be a big arc for him, right? That was mostly us before the arc, right? Usopp and Elbaf is very different in that is written into the story. Usopp saying, this shit is important for me. And it's reiterated over and over again. I need to get to Elbaf. This place is important for me to become a Brave Warrior of the Sea. So, very different reader assumptions versus in-story setup, right? In-story setup for Usopp is deep. It goes very far back, technically 1,000 chapters back. Funnily enough, I went back and checked, like, Elbaf is literally about 1,000 chapters in the story after Little Garden. So the timing is pretty similar. Time is kind of crazy, actually. Like, it takes 1,000 chapters to get from Little Garden all the way to Elbaf. Meek, thanks for the 5. What do you think happens if a holy knight like Sommers or Killingham gets caught in between 2 Damiurverse giants? I think they're fine, because they just don't get... I don't think Dory and Brogy are Conqueror's Haki users, right? So, like, they might get inadvertently hit, maybe, but they're immortal, so it doesn't really matter. Are you asking, like, what would their attitude be towards them? Like, would they try to attack them? I don't know. Snap, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 40 months, man. Japan update. Tomorrow I will go to Japan for 2 weeks. Cannot wait to see my girlfriend after half a year. Relax and eat good food. When read Kingdom, question mark. Fuck. I do, maybe this weekend. No, this weekend I might read Kagurabachi. This weekend I want to finish my game. I'm playing Black Myth Wukong right now. For the first time in a game, I'm genuinely kind of stuck at a boss in Wukong. And, like, again, I haven't played Elden Ring, but I've beaten Sekiro, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne. In those games, I will sometimes get just straight up stuck at a boss for a long time, but usually it will be something that's like a little bit unconventional or that forces me to like learn the game's mechanics. And then after that, I'm usually good, right? Like there's still hard bosses that'll get me stuck for like 2 hours or something like that. That happens. And that's like expected. I'm like the hardest bosses will get me stuck for like 2 hours or something like that, right? But there are times when I'm just like stuck for a really long time. Like I was really stuck for a very, very long time, like multiple sessions against the Cleric Beast in Bloodborne. But that's because I was learning to play the game, right? I was stuck for multiple sessions, multiple days against the Abyss Watchers in Dark Souls 3, but that's because I was learning to play the game. Usually after I get past that hump, there's not going to be a boss that takes me more than a couple hours, okay? And if there is, it's usually some sort of unconventional boss. Bosses that are just straight up duels are usually fine. In Wukong, there's this boss, I don't know if this is a spoiler or whatever, it's called the Yellow Luong that I'm playing at the start of Chapter 4. And I am genuinely fucking, like, I've tried on, I'd say 3 different sessions now to get this boss down. And I can't do it. So I'm just like, I might have to rethink my strategy. I find this boss very difficult. And I thought I'd gotten Black Myth Wukong's mechanics down, but maybe not. Maybe it's just, yeah, I'm just like, what the fuck? This is very, very difficult. And I was like, I didn't expect I'd find a boss in this game that I have more trouble with than I would from a FromSoft game. So that's pleasantly surprising. And I went online and I was like, how, like, I was looking up stuff. I was like, Black Myth Wukong, like, is this like harder than FromSoft games and stuff? And people are like, nah, it's not as hard as FromSoft games. This boss I'm on right now is hard. Like, it is genuinely, I'm like, fuck, this is, it's actually very hard for me to beat this fucking Yellow Luong thing. I don't know. Anyway, so I don't know why I shared all that with you guys. Maybe I just needed to get off my chest, but after I need to beat this game, and then in my free time I'll probably read Kagurabachi and then Kingdom. I think I kind of parcel out what I would like to do with my free time, if that makes sense. Was Pontiff hard for you? Oh, okay. Pontiff was hard for me. Pontiff actually took me the most time in the game after Abyss Watchers. If a boss takes me more than like, usually if a boss is taking me like multiple sessions, then I'm not really counting the hours at that point. Like Abyss Watchers, I remember that took me like multiple sessions. I don't even know how many hours that took me, right? Pontiff took me the next most amount of time. That took me 2.5 hours. But it's not quite the same because with Pontiff, how do I say this? For essentially the vast majority of Dark Souls 3, I was playing without upgrading my flasks because the game had explained how to do it early on or whatever, but I think I just forgot and it's like white bone shards or whatever. So I was playing for a pretty long time with like without upgrading my flasks, and my flask basically healed almost nothing. So there were a lot of points in the game later on I was just like, oh my god, Dark Souls 3 is like really, really difficult. And then finally I found out that you need to upgrade your flasks or whatever. And then I did that, and then everything was a lot easier. So Pontiff was, it did take me a very long time, but I think it was sometime after that that I upgraded my flask, and just like that, a lot of things became a lot easier. So I don't know how I weight Pontiff's difficulty, because I felt like there was a period of time where I felt like, yeah, I've got this boss down, I understand everything, but it felt like the margin of error for me was really low. Really, really low, where I was like, okay, I just can't fuck up at all, because if I get even one hit from this guy, it takes me like 2 drinks from my flask to heal. This is so difficult. So I don't know how to rate the difficulty of Pontiff exactly, because I do think part of it is like I could have beaten the boss significantly earlier. It's just that I was allowed to only take like 4 hits basically over the course of the fight, because I had no healing basically. Anyway, enough gaming talk, I guess. Yeah, I do want to read Kingdom. Yeah, but Snap, congrats on your trip to Japan. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy the 2 weeks. I hope you enjoy the vacation. I hope you have a great time with your girlfriend. And yeah, it's got to feel really good being able to see her after a half year. Taptio, thanks for the 5. Wano being the Joy Boy arc is what hinders it the most, since all the Odin, Dawn, etc. is all about the return of Joy Boy, which had no drama for Luffy himself. That's a really good point, man. Because it's very... Wano's so important in terms of lore implications for Luffy, and almost not important at all in terms of Luffy's character growth, right? And even Luffy doesn't need to grow every arc. That's not the type of character, but in terms of at least getting, like... You can go one arc back to Whole Cake Island. Luffy doesn't grow as a person in Whole Cake Island, but you get a lot of meaningful character writing out of him with the whole Sanji situation and his entire encounter with Katakuri. Whereas with Luffy and Katakuri, you're actually getting a lot of meaningful character writing out of Luffy in terms of his contrast with Katakuri. Whereas with Luffy and Kaido, because Luffy's being set up to awaken the Nika fruit and everything like that, which is all about laughing and stuff like that. Luffy and Kaido, they almost have they have so little. This is something that I talk about in the Wano analysis, but like one of my favorite things in One Piece is like when Luffy and a villain, right? The really meaningful villains in the story, you actually often get a lot of surprisingly philosophical discussion between Luffy and the villain. Not deep philosophical, because that's not how Luffy gets, but you always get to understand more of Luffy and who he is through his discussions with the villain. Like, if you read the 3 battles with Crocodile in a row, you actually get a lot of insight into Luffy over the course of those, right? Because he and Crocodile have contrasting views. If you read all of his dialogue between him and Lucci, and even him and Blue No beforehand, you get a lot of insight into how Luffy's perspective has been shaped by the events of the Enies Lobby arc, right? Even Luffy and Luffy and Katakuri, same thing. Like, a lot of his best fights really bring that out of him because it's an ongoing dialogue. With Luffy and Kaido, it's so fucking frustrating because the entire time they're just fucking laughing and giggling. That's the majority of the fight. Laughing and giggling. It's like, ha ha ha, he, isn't this fun, Kaido? That's the type of dialogue. And then at the very end, it's literally the last chapter of their fight that Kaido asks, what kind of world do you want to create, Luffy? And he's like, where all my friends can eat. And I'm like, holy shit, why couldn't this been more of the fight would have so much more meaning if that was something that was like a contrasting discussion between the two characters over the course of the battle. Because Kaido really wants to create this whole world of violence and everything like that, yada yada. That doesn't come through any of the battle. He's actually very coy with what his goals are and why he's doing everything. He's very coy about all that. It's just the last chapter of the fight. That's why Oda's kind of like ham-fisting it. Like, people talk about how Kaido's flashback is good and stuff. Even if you think, like, people shit on it, but there's some defenders. Even if you think Kaido's flashback is good, it's inherently terrible because of where it is placed, which is at the very fucking end of his story. You need to understand the villain and where the villain is coming from significantly earlier in the battle in order for the meaning and the themes of the battle and the contrast between the villain and the hero to really play out. It's like all the good potential writing between Luffy and Kaido and the contrast between the two is shoved in the last chapter where Oda's like, oh no, I forgot to give Luffy a contrasting point with the villain in terms of philosophy and and perspective. Let me shove in Kaido's flashback. So, okay, here's what Kaido really wants, and here's why he's like the way he is. And now let me add in 2 lines. Kaido's going to ask Luffy, what kind of world do you want to create? And then Luffy will have like a 1-line answer. It is so severely lacking compared to all of Luffy's past fights. It's just really, really sad, considering it's Luffy's longest fight, and it's the most shallow. So, I don't know. Hold on. Meek, thanks for the 2. No, I mean if you think they'd get turned as well. Oh, I don't think they would get turned. I think they're already under Imu's influence, so I don't think it works like that. I see what you're saying. King says, first I was small, then I was medium, then I was big. I mean, if we're being fully fair, right, like, Kaido's flashback is meant to basically explain why he has the worldview he has. His worldview is like he wants to create a world that's essentially a state of nature where hierarchy of strength determines who's at the top, who's at the bottom. That's what he wants to do, right? His flashback was a very rushed way of establishing that, but it did establish that, you know? I just wish it'd been a more prominent part of, like, the writing of the story up to that point. Let's get the stream likes up to 100 real quick. Let's get the stream likes up to 100. Also, I would like to remind people of an amazing deal that we've got going at the moment. So right now, if you like the posters, right? If you like the posters, we've got obviously the ice hoodie, which along with that, I don't know if we've got the two posters up here. Do we have the two posters up here? In our boss collection? Oh yeah. So we've got the exclusive Aokiji poster, and we've got the exclusive, the other exclusive Aokiji poster. And you can get both of these if you're one of the first 30 people to get the Aokiji hoodie. So this hoodie, we've got this deal running basically for the first 30 orders, and then it ends at the end of this month. So make sure you go in and get that right now. There's a one-of-a-kind Logia hoodie that you cannot get anywhere else. And it basically makes you... it basically is Aokiji brought to life. This is the vision of Aokiji brought to life, with the ice creeping up the arms and the devil fruit insignia right there. 100% cotton. This is stitched into the material. It's literally knitted into the material. So this is a very, very, very high quality hoodie. Definitely get it while you can. And if you get the first 30, if you're part of the first 30, you get 2 posters for free. It can be the 2 Aokiji posters that are exclusive, or you can get any 2 posters that you like from the rest of our collection. So this is a really good deal that we got going right now. So let me just drop that for you guys here. It's not ice like that. You know what I mean? It's the ice fruit. Other, like, real ice, fuck those guys. Okay, there's not ice like that. I guess the naming is perhaps unfortunate, but really it's the Aokiji hoodie. Oh shit, JWP. Thanks for jumping in with 10 gifted memberships. Holy shit, man. Thanks for joining in, man, and I hope you've been enjoying Elbaf so far. Really appreciate you coming back through the stream, obviously, as usual. So everybody say thanks to JWP for coming through. Yeah, man. Thanks for all the memberships. Everybody say thanks to JWP. Shouts in the chat to JWP, especially if you just gifted a membership. Definitely use your emotes and definitely say thanks to JWP, the patron saint that often comes through these streams. Political Morge channel time. I mean, this isn't... I don't think ice stuff is even political. I think it's just like... if you have any... like... just any soul or humanity whatsoever, right? Like, even if you're... let's say you're hardcore anti-immigration, right? That's totally... whatever, right? In fact, according to polling, majority of the country was anti-immigration before this administration's term began or whatever, right? Or at least wanting to crack down on immigration, right? That is irrelevant to your support for ICE, because the things that people have an issue with ICE with is the blatant disregard for the law, disregard for the safety and well-being of civilians, and just the sense that they have that because they're cracking down on immigration, that gives them free license to hurt, kill whoever they want. Like, it's just a whole different... it's irrelevant. Like, I feel like people are so focused on like, well, I gotta support ICE because of immigration or something like that. Like that's not relevant to what you're seeing in the videos. So I don't know. I don't want to get into all that, but like, I mean, maybe I should, but I know most of you guys are here for a One Piece stream, but maybe it'll be for a video later down the line. JWP, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 37 months. Oye Morge, what's up? I was watching the Pirate King podcast segment about Straw Hat power-ups. Good to see you, man. What's up? I like the Sanji exoskeleton power-up until Oda decided that advanced Conqueror's Haki is required. Weird choice to go Science and then require Haki. That's what I really hate about it, too. Not hate. Hate's the wrong word. It just confuses me because I truly feel like when we ended Whole Cake Island, it felt like we're at a really good point for Sanji's character where it was a hard rejection of the need for Germa's abilities and science. And Sanji's like, I'll be strong on my own, right? So it felt like a hardcore, just like, divergence from all that, right? I'm not even going to use the raid suit, right? And then in Wano, it was like, okay, I'm going to use the raid suit. Okay, I'm not going to use the raid suit. I'm going to destroy it. But now I get the Germa science exoskeleton ability. So it was just a convoluted way of like kind of walking back some of the Whole Cake Island development, but it felt like Oda was still able to make it work. It was like, okay, it's a sort of like, okay, it reverses what seemed to have been established at the end of Whole Cake, but it still sort of feels right for the character. Like, it's like, even if it feels a little contradictory, the direction that it went, it's like, okay, well, if this is how you want Sanji to get stronger and this is what you plan for him, then cool. We'll roll with this, right? But then now it's like, because at the end of Whole Cake, it's like, okay, I don't need science. And so you assume that, okay, Sanji doesn't need science. He's going to get stronger in Haki. His Haki's even talked about in the arc. Judge is talking about, like, damn, you have Haki and stuff like that, right? Even though Sanji's supposed to be a failure because that's a big point. Sanji's supposed to be a failure because he doesn't have the Germa science abilities. He doesn't have the exoskeleton, etc., right? But Judge is surprised that Sanji has Haki, right? So, and arc ends, Sanji doesn't want Germa's abilities, doesn't use Germa's abilities, doesn't want the raid suit, doesn't have the exoskeleton, but he's already proved he's pretty strong over the course of the arc, and it's like, okay, so Sanji can continue growing in Haki. Wano hits. Everybody else is fucking learning Haki. Luffy's improving his Haki. Zoro improves his Haki. Fucking Yamato, who we just met, improving Haki. Yada yada, right? Haki, big thing, right? Sanji, instead, is like, never mind, I'm going to fucking use the raid suit that I said I'm not going to use. And it's like, okay, I guess the raid suit's his power-up. And then the arc progresses, and it's like, okay, the raid suit's not his power-up. He's going to reject the raid suit, but he's unlocked the Germa exoskeleton. So everybody else has improved in Haki. We would have assumed Sanji was going to improve in Haki because he rejected the science route because it represents his father. But he doesn't improve in Haki, and instead he's getting the science abilities. So it's like, okay, well, we can work with this because I think it was a good scene at the very least when he rejected the raid suit with Queen and everything, even though he did get the exoskeleton abilities. I think even if it makes the character arc a little convoluted and contradictory to Whole Cake Island, I think the scene itself was good, and it did make it was a dramatic scene, right? So it's like, okay, cool. So Sanji is going to be the warrior of science that he said that he's not going to be. Looks like he's not going to get that improvement in Haki like Luffy and Zoro are getting. And then we get to Elbaf, and it's like, never mind. We are going to get the improvement in Haki, and that's really going to be his avenue to grow. So, Conqueror's Haki is obviously, like, way better than fucking exoskeleton bullshit or whatever. So it's like, why even write in the exoskeleton stuff in the first... Like, because it's not just confusing power progression-wise. It's like, here's your new power-up. It's science. I don't need science, I have Haki. Okay, cool. Next arc. No Haki improvement. Actually, I'm going to do the power of science. Okay, so we're not doing the Haki thing. Okay, but then the next arc, actually, I'm going to get Haki. I'm going to get a big improvement in Haki or whatever. So it's like, well, then why'd we do this science thing? Especially because character-wise, it's like, reject my father's stuff, use my own strength. Next arc, use my father's stuff, not really improve my own strength. Whatever. We're going down the father route now. Then next arc, I am actually really strong. I can use Conqueror's Haki. I didn't need my father's science strength or whatever, right? And to anyone saying like, oh, well, the exoskeleton was a necessary improvement or whatever, regardless, it wasn't, because the exoskeleton does the same thing as armament Haki. Sanji could have just improved his armament Haki last arc, and then this arc get Conqueror's Haki. Sorry, I'm skipping Egghead, but no one really improved in Egghead, right? So in Wano, Sanji could have just gotten armament Haki, and then this arc got Conqueror's Haki, and that's more of a natural sort of progression, right? Obviously, sorry, Sanji's always had armament. I mean, like, strong, like, get really good armament, right? Like, the exoskeleton, like, just improve his armament that arc instead of get the exoskeleton. I don't think there was anybody that felt like Sanji, like, before Sanji unlocked the exoskeleton against Queen, I do not think there was a single reader who was saying Sanji needs that exoskeleton. Everybody was like, oh, we're looking forward to seeing Sanji improve in Haki this arc. Then Oda wrote in the exoskeleton. If Oda never wrote in the exoskeleton and just said Sanji improved in Haki, then everyone would have rolled with that. Nobody would be like, wait, no, Sanji's bones are just too brittle to be fighting and stuff like that. Like, that's not a thing. Like, that's not a thing for any fucking top tier One Piece character. Nobody else needs a fucking exoskeleton. Why does Sanji need an exoskeleton? It's so fucking random. Maybe Oda didn't want to give them all Conqueror's coding all in one arc. I totally get that. I 100% get that. But then just improve Sanji's armament and observation. That's all. Like, just improve his armament and observation. That's all he could have had that arc to do that. That's it. Like, just make him better at armament and observation. That's all. The exoskeleton is only necessary if Oda decides the exoskeleton is necessary, but we're not looking at other characters like Garp. How does Garp fight without an exoskeleton? Like, none of these fucking melee fighters need an exoskeleton. It's fucking random as fuck. I think Oda just wanted him to have both in the future and is setting them up one by one. But the exoskeleton isn't relevant. It's only a thing for Sanji because Oda just decided it's a thing. You know what I mean? Like, if it was replaced by Sanji just improving his armament Haki, it's still functionally the same thing, and it doesn't walk back the character development, and it doesn't force him to rely on his father's science, you know? From Francisco Mas, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 40 months, man. Hi, Morge, have you been up to date with Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 and Jujutsu Kaisen Majulo? If so, what do you think about it? Been really enjoying the new anime episodes. They feel very stylish. I'm seeing spoilers about Jujutsu Kaisen Majulo. I'm seeing that it's pretty popular with people. I saw some little thing with Yuji today about how strong he is in the future that I think is absolutely absurd, but I guess we wait and see. I don't like Yuji at all. He's one of my least favorite characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, and he's probably one of my least favorite anime, manga main characters, period. Just really dull personality, in my opinion. But whatever. So that's... It makes me not care about Jujutsu Kaisen Majulo if Yuji's going to be, like, a big star in it. As for Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3, I watched the first 2 episodes in sub. I definitely want to watch more. My girlfriend and I are going to watch it in dub, so we're going to wait till next Thursday once the first 4 episodes are out in dub, and then binge that. I think that's the plan. But from everything I've heard, Season 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen is, like, going to be as good, if not better, than Season 2. Random guy, thanks to the 5. Pirate King title holds much less weight now. Roger had 5 other equals in his era, possibly several in the modern era, even stronger, was just a dude. I can't say that that's not correct. I do feel like this is something that tends to just happen in lots of stories, because, like, you know, like, in Naruto, Hokage was a huge deal, like, at the start of part 1, because it's like, okay, there's only 4 Hokage, you know, there's only 4 Hokage ever, they're like the Mount Rushmore of ninjas. We heard that the 4th Hokage was the strongest ever. That's what we were told at the beginning, right? And then the 3rd Hokage, we saw how strong he was, etc. And then as Naruto progresses, it's just like, fuck, well, like, any fucking dude can become Hokage. Okay, Sanada is Hokage. Okay, now Danzo, this dude you'd never fucking heard of, is Hokage. Okay, now Kakashi without the Sharingan just somehow became Hokage. A fucking Jonin level dude. Because Kakashi without the Sharingan was definitely just a fucking Jonin level dude, right? Like, it's just like... Now, anybody and everybody... And Kakashi didn't even fucking want to become Hokage. Like, Naruto's having to, like, sit there. He's like, I fucking saved the entire planet and became, like, a ninja god. And instead, they're making fucking my old teacher, who never even wanted to become Hokage, he's gonna become Hokage now. Like, they just started throwing the Hokage title around like candy, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Konohamaru is the next fucking Hokage or some shit. Um, yeah, like they just threw the title around like candy, and then plus we learned about all these other Kages that existed and everything like that, and it's like fucking Gaara became a Kage before Naruto. I'm just like, this is the saddest shit. Like, anybody is fucking becoming Hokage, like Kage of whatever, right? So the title just carries almost no weight by the end of the story, right? I did not give one shit when Naruto became Hokage, because I'm like, I fucking watch dudes who never even cared about Hokage become Hokage. Black Clover, Wizard King, huge deal at the beginning of the story. At this point, it's like Asta would fucking, like, there's like 15 different characters that would shit all over Julius Novachrono, the original Wizard King. Like, there's it's a dime a dozen characters that could be Wizard King or Wizard King level if they wanted to. It just happens. I didn't think it would happen in One Piece, because it's just such a more planned out story, and it really did feel like the build up to the title of Pirate King felt very different and much more focused than these other stories. So I didn't think that it would happen in One Piece, but it kind of did. Like, I would say this, like, to me, almost like Rayleigh and Gabon hold more mythic weight to me at this point than Roger, because Rayleigh and Gabon still feel like they've got this sort of mystique about them to me. I don't feel that way with Roger anymore. Hums, thanks for the 5. I hope everybody in here has had a great week. Do you think Sanji's Haki could be a trade-off thing? Unable to ever hit a woman, but can use Conqueror's Haki. I don't know. That could be good. I mean, he can't hit a woman anyway. Base Julius still top 5? I don't think that's true. But maybe I'm wrong. I'd have to go back, look through Black Clover, but I really don't think that's true. I think a lot of characters have surpassed him, personally. I would love to see Sanji having to trade off his science powers somehow for Haki, but I don't know. JWP, thanks to the 10. Haven't been able to make streams live because of work, but I've definitely been listening on my drives to and from. Also pretty sure you're right. Sanji and Robin versus Sommers is going to be nice. Definitely watch out for tomorrow's video, man. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm happy that I've been able to entertain you on drives and everything like that, and thanks for being able to swing in today. We obviously love to see you. JP, thanks for the 5. Only realized on reread, but Elbaf mentions love surprisingly a lot. Is there any other arc that has this as an explicit theme as strongly? I think Egghead is... I think the theme of love is very prominent in Egghead, but maybe it's not talked about as explicitly. Like, the word love is not used as much or as explicitly. Yeah. Taptio Treviso, thanks for the 5. Yuji's in the context of Jujutsu Kaisen is that his burden of helping people. Yuji is in the context of Jujutsu Kaisen in that his burden of helping people, and in Jujutsu Kaisen, every character who acts like that is punished for not being selfish. I can still understand the character concept, but still feel like it's boring. Like, he's a boring character for me to watch, especially because the tricky thing is, like, almost every shonen hero, period, wants to help people. Even Luffy, who explicitly says, I'm not a hero, even he, if you put him in the right context or whatever, or like if you open his eyes up to things going around, he's going to put his life on the line to help people, right? Like, that, to me, it's kind of like the basic shonen hero characteristic is like good guy that wants to help people. That's like a very basic thing that we see pretty... like 8 out of 10 or like 4 out of 5 shonen heroes are going to have that characteristic, right? And with Yuji, it's kind of like, well, but there's usually more to it than just that, right? Whereas with Yuji's, it's kind of like just that, and that's pretty much it, if that makes sense. Like, even with Midoriya, like Deku from My Hero, right? Wants to be a hero, save people, save as many people, right? Even with him, I think that there's more things that he has to actually, like, grapple with or kind of like delve, like even for a series with as simple as My Hero, right? Like, Midoriya is basically like, okay, if you took Yuji's writing, but actually forced him to grapple with certain things surrounding it, right? Whereas with Yuji, it's kind of like, I gotta save people. Oh, no, I couldn't save people. I don't think I'm saving people right. Okay, I gotta save more people. Like, it's very, very, very... It's just generic. There's so many shonen heroes whose thing is like, I want to be here, like fucking Fire Force, which I'm enjoying, by the way. There's a new episode that came out today I want to watch, like Fire Force, my hero, fucking like most fucking shonen heroes already have that. It's usually they have that, and then there's more to it. But Yuji, it's kind of just like that, and that's his main thing. I just don't find it, I don't know. I don't find it compelling, and part of it is also just like, Julius is the final. I don't want to spoil things. He's not, though. Pirate King is wealth, fame, power, and sailing around the entire Grand Line, so it is a strength title. I don't know. Tiptio, thanks to the 2. The Pirate King thing still matters with finding Lafto. Yeah, I don't think it doesn't matter, right? Because ultimately being the one to find it is really what kind of cements it. I think that the catch is kind of like, it feels like, how do I say this? It feels like becoming Pirate King today is like 1,000,000 times harder than it was back then. Because back then, no one else was competing with Roger to do that. Right? Like, it was kind of like Roger just sailed the Grand Line and did his stuff, right? Even if the overall level of the seas was potentially higher, right? You had Prime Roger, Prime Whitebeard, Prime Garp, etc. Whereas today's Marines are obviously not as strong. I don't think Kaido, Big Mom are as strong as like Prime Whitebeard, Prime Roger. Actually, obviously not, because like even old Whitebeard today was still being like, you know, he's still a Yonko or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think in terms of the level of the sea was higher back then because you had all these legends coexisting, but the competition was lower. Whereas nowadays, getting Pirate King means something totally different than back then. Like, back then it felt like... It's complicated, though, because, like, Kaido even talks about how, like, Roger brought the pirate world to heel because of Haki. So you could assume that Roger had a lot of great battles back in that era that really cemented it as not just, like, oh, an explorer's thing, but, like, also a strength-based thing. It's just complicated. I don't know. Damian Wright, thanks for bringing a Pirate King tier. Speaking of Pirate King, thanks for bringing a Pirate King tier member for 29 months, man. Maybe Oda didn't plan for the Gods Knights, Elders, and Imu being only able to be defeated with Conquerors when he was writing Wano, and with Gaban having it on top, maybe Oda had to give it to Sanji. I would really, really, really hate for that to be the case, because that feels like kind of haphazard writing, because Conqueror's Haki feels like a very important, like, it's a character thing in the story. Like, it says a lot about your character to have Conqueror's Haki, you know? So I don't think it should be based on Oda just coming up with an ability that can only be countered by Conqueror's Haki. What about Chainsaw Man, says Benchwarmer? I mean, that's exactly the point. Like, that's one of the reasons that Denji is such a phenomenal character. Like, he is so dramatically different from the classic shonen mold. Chainsaw Man in general isn't really a true shonen series. It's its own thing that is forced to pretend to be a shonen series, right? But you get what I'm saying, which is the standard shonen thing is just you got a hero who wants to save people. It's just that with Yuji, there's just not much more to it than that. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 10. It would be cool if Usopp's growth came through interactions with a monster trio like Enies Lobby with Sanji. Zoro could be an Elbaf and Luffy could be later. That would be really cool. I like that scene with Sanji and Enies Lobby a lot. That's a really, really good scene. That's a very good scene. JP, thanks for the 10. Kakashi as Hokage was a complete shoehorn, but he invents purple lightning. I did hear about the purple lightning thing. That, like, off-screen he gets purple lightning. Remote control lightning that's stronger than regular lightning because why not? To stay strong after the Sharingan. I get that he invents that later, but he definitely doesn't do that on day one. Which means on day one, they're just making a dude who is a standard fucking Jonin. They're basically making a dude who is weaker than Kabuto in part 1 Hokage. Right? Because Kabuto is supposed to be equal to Kakashi in part 1 when Kakashi had the Sharingan. Now Kakashi has no Sharingan. So, like, day 1 Kakashi that is made Hokage is just a fucking random ass Jonin. Deptio, thanks for the 2. Jujutsu Kaisen story rewards selfish actions. Every big power-up happens by characters being selfish and not selfless, and it isn't a hero's type of world. Dude, I totally get that. I 100% understand that. I'm just saying that that doesn't change. Just because you're putting the main character into a context like that doesn't make me feel like the main character's writing is particularly deep. That's all I can say. There's never any time that I'm reading Yuji and I'm like, okay, there's something actually interesting about this character that I haven't seen from other heroes, right? Just because it's happening in the context of a different story doesn't change that the actual writing for him feels very, very generic. I mean, down to like, my grandpa told me to save people. That's pretty much it. That's what we get. My grandpa told me to save people. If we even understood more of his like driving motivation, if there was some greater depth to it, right, then it might be more interesting. But it's literally like my grandpa told me to save people. That's why he wants to be more selfless than the average person there. That's it. Like, there's not really much depth to people's different reasons for like, I get it. Like, every Jujutsu sorcerer has like different reasonings for why they're a Jujutsu sorcerer. Megumi's is very different from Yuji's. Nanami's is much different from Yuji's, yada yada. I get the idea, but the idea is not the same as actually what we're getting out of the character. Is there anything interesting and unique writing-wise that we're getting out of this character and his philosophies? I think no. And also personality-wise, Yuji just doesn't have that much like, there are shonen heroes who I'm like, okay, this character's kind of generic, but they're really funny, right? Or like this, like with Naruto, right? Yeah, he wants to help people, he wants to save Konoha, etc. But there's something also deeply moving, at least very early on, about his story, which is like, you get so much of this kid who's an outcast of his village, ostracized, and there is more layers to what's happening in there, and a lot more that makes the character much more emotionally compelling, right? He's basically fighting these feelings of being an outcast and trying to make the village acknowledge him, yada yada, right? Deku, right? Yeah, he wants to save people, but the past that we get for him is also interesting. Like, no quirk, having to grow up as basically like this belittled figure who has been told all of his life, yada yada. And that plays into a lot of his philosophies and him grappling with what it means to be a hero, what it means to want to save people, etc. And he's got eccentricities, right? Eccentricities to his character. There's funny, quirky things about his character, him mumbling to himself, writing things in his notebook, etc. Like, there's things that, even if it doesn't make me love the character, it's things that make him like aspects to the character that make the personality a little bit different than other cookie cutter shonen, right? If I were to boil down, like, Asta's a cookie cutter shonen type hero, but he's funny, and he's got a lot of funny fucking moments, funny reactions. There's aspects to his enthusiasm and dim-wittedness that comes across as good jokes, right? Yuji, there's not much to that. There's very few times he makes me laugh. There's very few times that he makes me feel inspired. There's very few times that I feel like there's something philosophical that's coming out of him or something like that. It's like if you just distilled the basic shonen hero concept into the most in-a-box hero possible. Like, even if you want to make a strong argument, the strongest argument you can about, like, why it carries deep thematic meaning in the context of Jujutsu Kaisen, the personality of the character straight up, to me, is dull and does not have that much going for it. The personality, let's say that. You are boring, shit that Sukuna literally said to Yuji. Yeah, I mean, that's... In fact, I think that Geiji himself literally has a quote about how he deliberately made Yuji pretty bland in the context of Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, it's acknowledged in story that Yuji's kind of boring. Benchwarmer says, what about Ichigo? Ichigo, man. I don't defend Ichigo anymore. I don't defend Ichigo. When I was young, in middle school, Ichigo was like the shit for me. Like, Ichigo was cool. I think Ichigo was my favorite shonen MC. I don't know if I ever liked Ichigo more than Luffy, but I just found Ichigo to be so cool when I was in middle school watching Soul Society and stuff like that. Like, Bankai, like, amazing stuff. Like, Ichigo felt like the definition of cool to me growing up. But with Ichigo, I would add, like, let's say not much more, not that different than standard shonen motivations, wants to protect people he cares about, right? But I would still say, even with Ichigo, there are defining characteristics. If we set aside depth, there are defining characteristics that make him stand out and make him fun to read as a character, and that Ichigo is not like a lot of the shonen heroes are more like goofy, just relatable kids, or like goofy young characters or whatever. Ichigo is a character that was written to be more of a little bit more of an edge, more of a serious, edgy, traditionally cool teen type character. That in itself gives Ichigo a different dimension to his characterization that makes him stand out a little bit from an Asta, Shinra, Deku, etc., right? Most of them aren't cool characters. Ichigo, I guess you would say, is cool. That in itself is a thing that separates him a little bit. Yuji, I genuinely don't find anything that feels like there's much unique characterization given to him compared to other shonen heroes. To me, it's kind of like if you take the standard shonen concept, but you don't bother to add anything else to it. Like, does he have interesting personality aspects? No, not really. Any interesting, like, humor or something like that? No. Any interesting philosophy? No, not really. What about backstory? Something really moving with his backstory? No, we kind of skipped that. It's just his grandpa told him to save people. Okay, that's Yuji then, right? That's basically, even powers, fighting style, anything different? No, it's kind of, he punches, right? Even the most basic shonen heroes tend to have very simple abilities, right? But Yuji's is kind of the most basic I've seen it get, which is just punching. Just punching. Up until the last fight, I'll give you guys that, but no spoilers about that. But for the 90% of the story, it's just Yuji really feels like just shonen stuff distilled and then kind of stripped away to like, just kind of like blank slate shonen character, and then he forgot to add additional parts of it, right? Like, it's just like, what's the core thing of a shonen character? Give that shonen MC, just put that on the paper, and then I'll add some stuff later. I forgot to add more stuff. That's basically what it feels like. Julian Reed, thanks for the 2. Yuji is more recognizable and compelling as Sukuna. Oh, there's the other part of that too, which is the demon inside trope, which I guess all fucking shonen heroes have at this point. Even Denji isn't innocent of this one, but it's just wild that so many shonen heroes nowadays, like Ichigo had the Hollow Mask, Naruto had Kurama, like there's always something going on inside, right? Denji has Pochita, Yuji has Sukuna. You could argue that fucking Deku has the past spirits of previous users inside of him. I don't know. I've never enjoyed that trope ever. Tiptia says, I don't hear it from a guy who skipped 60 chapters from a 270 chapter length manga. Maybe Culling Game will change my mind, but I've seen the entire conclusion of Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't really know what to say. Like, wouldn't the best character writing for Yuji be at the end? It's pretty much the same, right? Keep in mind that none of this is like a hard indictment on Jujutsu Kaisen, because like I don't think the main character is the main appeal of Jujutsu Kaisen for me and for a lot of people, and I think that's okay. A story's worth is not based around just its main character. I think Jujutsu Kaisen's got a lot going for it aside from just Yuji. I just think that Jujutsu Kaisen's most compelling characters are not its main trio, personally. Growth Stonks, thanks to the 5. I think it's guaranteed that Loki gets Dami reversied. He's been set up as the villain of the arc since the start, with Rox and Harold getting Dami reversied. I do think that there is potential there. Dami reversied Loki would be crazy, because then that'd be even stronger than Dami reversied Harold, right? Or stronger than Dami reversied... That'd be even stronger than Dami reversied Rox, because Rox was equal to Harold. Loki is apparently stronger than Harold, right? So this would be just an unprecedented situation. Maybe that would take a team fight, like the Strats versus Oars. Yeah, Hollow Ichigo is really cool. I like Hollow Ichigo a lot. I think Hollow Ichigo is my favorite of the Demon Inside, like, versions, I think. But I'm just saying the trope has become repeated quite a bit. Calling Games is great, but you're not missing much characterization for Yuji in it. Yep. I mean, I wouldn't expect so, because his character is the same in the final arc as it was in Shibuya. It doesn't really change. The best Yuji moment is in the Culling Games, dude. I think I know... Never mind, I'm not going to say anything. Yeah. JP, thanks for the 5. Caught up to the Chainsaw Man manga. Okay, don't spoil the last few chapters. I think I'm 4 or 5 chapters behind. The sushi bar scene was probably the most intense emotions I've felt for cheering on a Demon Inside trope. That's interesting, because, like, Chainsaw Man has not deeply moved me in part 2 at any point, I think. But maybe if I binge the whole thing, I'll feel that. Four-tailed Naruto speak. Four-tailed Naruto is really cool. Four-tailed Naruto is really cool. Loud Waffle says, crazy that Luffy's just hanging out with a guy who's at the very least in the same realm as Roger power level wise. Yeah, it's nuts. I wonder if Luffy even recognizes it. Luffy as Nika. Nika is not... I mean, a fruit is a fruit, right? You could say that, well, Zoan fruits have a mind of their own. But ultimately, like, historically, we've considered... Like, it's not like there's another being that Luffy is interacting with. As far as we know. Ichigo isn't technically even a demon inside, since he is the demon. Yeah, I mean, I gotta remember, he has white inside of him, right? That hollow, but I agree. Like, it's ultimately Ichigo speaking with different aspects of himself. So it is different. And again, I like Hollow Mask Ichigo is badass. It's really, really cool. My only issue with Hollow Mask Ichigo is its success rate was so abysmal. I don't know what Kubo was doing. I'm really looking forward to Thousand Year Blood War Core 4. But I don't know what Kubo was doing with Ichigo's entire Hollow Mask situation, because it's the most badass transformation. But, like, my memory of it is basically... It was very frustrating. I was so excited for Ichigo, Hollow Mask, all of that stuff. What basically happened was Hollow Mask, really exciting power. And then what happens is, like, he loses to Grimmjow. It's like, okay, loses to Grimmjow in a very, very humiliating way. I don't think I've seen a shonen main character get beaten up in a manner that is more humiliating than Ichigo versus Grimmjow. Like, that was really, really... That was, like, abusive. Like, I don't know what Kubo was doing right there. So it's like, okay, Ichigo will get the run back, and it's going to be really satisfying when he beats Grimmjow. He gets the run back, having trained his Hollow Mask, loses again to one-armed Grimmjow because he couldn't control the Hollow Mask for more than 11 seconds. And this is after Ichigo comes in, like, spouting some badass lines. Like, he's spouting some really cool lines about how it's going to be different this time. And then he gets fucking humiliated again. It's like, okay, this Hollow Mask is not... needs to do better. That was one-armed Grimmjow, right? And you felt confident you could beat him before the time limit went up. Didn't. And then he gets the third... Then he gets... he goes to Hueco Mundo. After all this Hollow Mask training, he has to pull out the Hollow Mask against Dordoni, not even a fucking Espada. And it's like, okay, so that checks off one win for the Hollow Mask. Immediately loses to Ulquiorra. Another humiliation of the Hollow Mask. It's like, the fuck were you training for this whole time? And Ulquiorra gets revealed to be the fourth Espada and not the first Espada, and didn't have to use his sword, didn't have to use Resurrection. So it's like, This hollow mask is fucking bullshit. What did I watch Ichigo train for so long for, and the Vizards make fun of him for so long, and him get the shit beaten out of him by Grimmjow multiple times, and now by Ulquiorra? It's like, okay, well, how about another rematch with Grimmjow? It's like, okay. This time, Ichigo really needs to give Grimmjow some payback or whatever, right? Ichigo does use the hollow mask, goes extreme diff with Grimmjow, right? Like, barely beats him by the skin of his teeth. And it doesn't feel like a very, like, it doesn't feel like Ichigo's giving Grimmjow, like, the punishment that Grimmjow kind of deserved after all the things Grimmjow's done to him. It's like, okay, after all that shit talk by Ichigo, all that training, yada yada, barely beats the 6th Espada by the skin of his teeth. The very next thing that happens is that, like, fucking Byakuya and Kenpachi, characters that Ichigo beat in the previous arc without the hollow mask, they show up, and then they're casually low diffing Espada or like mid diffing Espada that are roughly as strong as Grimmjow. And I'm just losing my mind. I'm like, the fuck was all this hollow mask training for? It was so cool and badass. And then Ichigo's off to fight Ulquiorra like he's got a shot against him, gets fucked up with the hollow mask again. Ulquiorra humiliates the fuck out of him. And then Ichigo goes berserk mode, unlocks this new form that is never used again, and then wins. But the point is that the main hollow mask that Ichigo trained with doesn't work for any of his fights. And you know what happens after this? It's not over. Because Ichigo, after this, has 3 more losses with the hollow mask back to back to back in the span of, I swear to God, 20 chapters. He comes back downstairs after the Ulquiorra fight, hollow mask on, gets fucked up by Yami because the hollow mask doesn't work. It stops working on him partway through. And then he goes back to fucking Karakura town, tries to sneak attack Aizen, does all this shit, perfect opportunity to use the hollow mask, loses to Aizen when Aizen's in his most vulnerable state ever. And then he gets like handed off from Aizen to fucking Jin. The dad's like, I'll take care of Aizen. How about you just deal with Jin? And Ichigo's like, okay, let's pull out this hollow mask for like the 15th time. Loses to Jin. The hollow mask has like I think it's got a win against Dordoni if you count that, and then Grimmjow. It's really frustrating. Now that I think about it, there's so much time invested into that hollow mask. And it was like an auto lose button. It was like every time Ichigo puts that shit on, it's like a loss. GDY7 says, nah, the first Bankai was hard. And that was so cool. That was my favorite Ichigo moment in the series. The entire I've talked about this on stream before, but the entire sequence from showing up to stop the execution with that, like, supposed, like, the execution sword that has the power of, like, 1,000,000 Zanpakuto or whatever. Ichigo casually stops it. Bare hand defeats 3 lieutenants, 0 diff. And then the entire fight sequence with, like, look, that's what's cool. Like, he spent 3 days training the Bankai, came back, debuted the Bankai against Byakuya, and won in, like, really, really cool, badass fashion. That felt really good. I had to watch him train for weeks with this fucking dumbass hollow mask that looks so badass and is just the coolest shonen power-up on paper. And it's just a string of, like, just being passed around from Espada to Aizen to Jin to whatever. Like, everybody gets it's like, oh, Ichigo's coming through with the hollow mask? All right, let's fuck him up. Like, he ends up with the hollow mask with a losing record. He has a losing record with the hollow mask against everybody except for Dodoni, who's not even Espada. It was just frustrating. I don't know. I just had to rant about that a little bit. Virgil Hawkins. Thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 40 months. Do your friends, family, girlfriend also find your ability to mispronounce everything absurd? Finished Mad Men, GOAT of TV, and disagree on what you said about comparing Mad Men and Breaking Bad. Plus read Witch Hat to tell you. I always forget to read Witch Hat. It is on my list. Witch Hat is on my list, on my anime list and stuff. I do get, okay, so here's the thing. I have a defense. All right? Which is, we've realized this slowly over time. And yes, I do get called out a lot. Like, with my friends, especially in college, I got called out a lot for mispronouncing a lot of things. So I grew up in an Indian family, right? And my family doesn't have accents because in India, they all went to basically, like, how do I explain? my family doesn't really have accents. It just was the region and areas that they grew up or whatever. I don't have an Indian accent as far as I know. However, my mom and dad's schooling, because the British took over India for a long time, right? Their schooling taught them a lot of British pronunciations of words, okay? Like in India in general, the pronunciation of words that is taught is British pronunciations, right? But with an Indian skew as well, okay? So, not only, like coming here, growing up here, a lot of things that would be pronounced different, like salmon. I used to say salmon instead of salmon. It's because that's what I'm hearing at home. And it also skews just phonetically how I would sound out new words. It's a weird reason because it's not like it's one-to-one with how British people pronounce things either. It's this weird middle ground. So I grew up with just a different, like, it's not something that comes up often. Most words I pronounce correctly, but once in a while I'll just say something that sounds correct in my head, but it turns out that's not how you would say it here. And especially new words and their pronunciations, I think my intuitive phonetic assumptions as to how a new word would be pronounced is also very frequently incorrect. Disagree on what you said about comparing Mad Men and Breaking Bad. I mean, I just think they're different shows. Like, Breaking Bad is like a crime thriller which is focused on like fast-paced plot twists, and not fast. Breaking Bad is slow for a crime thriller, I guess you would say, but it's focused on like big plot twists, and it veers a bit more into like fiction at points. Like some things are unrealistic, like Gus having half his face blown off and walking out straightening his tie and stuff like that. Like it plays into that stuff to some degree, right? Mad Men is trying to be as grounded, realistic as possible. It's two different shows, right? It's just two different shows. I think it's comparing two very different things, right? It's like, how do I compare Lord of the Rings to The Godfather, right? Both phenomenally crafted films, but how do you compare those two? They're so different, right? If you want more grounded, more real, more focused on pure character storytelling, Lord of the Rings does have great character storytelling, but The Godfather is going to beat it out on that, right? If you want stuff that's more epic, crazy plot stuff or whatever, it's Lord of the Rings, right? But they both have great writing, great dialogue, great acting, great cinematography, great music, all of that, right? They're both as well-made films as you could ever hope for. It's just that one subject matter is more grounded and real, and one subject matter is trying to bring fantasy to life. Sham, thanks for the 5. Would you be okay with a Straw Hat defeat this late in the story? I would love for the Straw Hats to lose. I feel like losing at least once in the final war would be really good for them. At least once. Just give me once. I don't think it needs to happen in Elbaf. I don't think the momentum of Elbaf really demands that, personally. But it would be cool if it happened. I'm never going to be opposed to it. Taptio Trevisa, thanks to 2. Kubo gives Ichigo power-ups a 10% boost, or that's a really good way to put it. A 10% boost or 10,000 or like 100,000 times boost. Malcolm in the Middle mogs all from every genre. I was never the biggest Malcolm in the Middle fan, but there is a quote from Malcolm in the Middle that I love. It's one of my favorite TV quotes of all time. I still remember this. So for context, Malcolm is a genius. He's a boy genius, okay? And he's usually the smartest person in any room he goes into, right? He's usually just the smartest person around. Smartest person in the show, smartest person, period, right? And then one day, this other, like, super duper boy genius shows up, like child prodigy or whatever, like way smarter than even Malcolm is what it appears like, right? And they're kind of competing, but the other kid seems like a lot smarter. So at some point, Malcolm's like asking him, like, what's it like in there? What's it like in your brain? And the other kid's like, what do you mean? And Malcolm's like, well, in my brain, usually when I'm solving something, it's like I'm thinking, and then suddenly an explosion goes off. And then that explosion leads to another explosion. And then that leads to another explosion. And then suddenly a million explosions are going off in my head. And suddenly everything comes together. So what's it like in your brain? And the other kid goes and like, oh, well, my brain's like a beehive. And every bee has a brain like yours. And I thought that's just like what are the that might be my favorite bit. It's stupid, but it might be my favorite bit of TV dialogue like ever. It's such a cold off, especially if you watch the scene. It's such a cold offhand roast because the other kid's not even trying to be mean. He's just genuinely like way smarter than Malcolm and it's just like doesn't even think Malcolm's like anywhere. Like to him, Malcolm's just another kid, but to Malcolm, it's like, oh, you're the only person smarter than me. How could this be? This the B thing. I probably talked about this on stream before, but I just that little bit of dialogue lives rent free in my head. I was like, that was really funny. I'm not a huge Malcolm in the Middle fan beyond that, but because I've only seen like, I actually probably seen a decent number of episodes, but not like never like a full season or something like that. But yeah, that's what I always think of when I think of Malcolm in the Middle. I'm like, not a huge fan of the show necessarily. I like it fine, but it does have like maybe my favorite little back and forth ever. JP, thanks for the 5. Bruh, have the same experience. Indian parents with British schooling skewed how I perceive new words, notably if you learned it from reading first. Yeah, okay, I'm glad. I'm not alone in this. We did solve it because, like, over winter break, I was with my family back home, and my aunt and uncle from India were also visiting, and we're also visiting my great uncle in Florida. So it's like a lot of us all in one place, and they all have similar upbringings, right? So then I kind of realized there, I was like, their pronunciation, like we all similarly, it's like certain things that are just like a little bit wrong pronunciation wise, but they would be correct if you came from our schooling system, and they would sound more correct in Britain, for example, or they'd be closer to. So the way you learn like base pronunciations for like what sounds these two words together make, or these two words together, or like these two letters, etc. make, it is actually skewed if you grow up in an American or British schooling system. So I didn't grow up in a British schooling system, but your formative stuff is usually from like speaking with your family early on growing up, right? I don't know. King AP says, don't worry, there are like 1.5 billion Indians. Yeah, that's true. Henchby says, I learned all my words from manga growing up. My pronunciation and vocabulary are fucked. That's funny. Are you from Kerala, India? No, I was born in Delhi, and then moved to the United States when I was like 1.5 years old. Like, I don't remember being in India. Eric says Oppenheimer is a great scene like that. I don't remember that. Who was that between? King AP, my inner machinations are an enigma. That's from the Simpsons, right? I'm glad JP validated my feelings. All right, guys, we're probably going to wrap up stream right around here. Just a reminder. Go get the Ice hoodie while you can. The Aokiji hoodie, let's call it that, to avoid comparisons. But the Aokiji hoodie, get it while you can. The first 30 people who get this are going to get 2 posters free. That is still running, so you can still get in on the first 30 orders. And you get access to 2 exclusive Aokiji posters that you can only get if you get this hoodie. So definitely get this while you can. Yeah, this is the launch of our Logia line, so definitely look forward to more like this coming up around the corners. We got some great stuff planned, but definitely go get that while you can. The first 30 orders are going to get in on this deal as well, so it's a really, really good deal. Yeah, and with that, I think we're going to wrap stream here. Thank you all for tuning in, and with that, I will talk to you all later.